A self-depreciating fun fact about me, I guess. Did you know that reading in your head and reading out loud actually use two different parts of your brain? When you read silently, it's mostly just your brain recognizing symbols and turning them into meaning. But when you read out loud, you add speech production, motor control, and even hearing your own voice back. So it's way harder. I've already mentioned I'm dyslexic, right? Well, here's a perfect example of what it actually means when the words start jumbling around on the page, and how I try and get around it. You ready? Don't judge me, I'm special. And if you laugh, you're going to hell. Shit, hold on. This was, for fuck's sake. This was as good of an opening as I was going to get. This was as good of an opening as I was going to get. This was as good as an opening as I was going to get. Yeah, that happens a lot. It takes me about an hour to read through a 15-minute script that I wrote. So if you'd like to support my valiant efforts, I'll link my PO box down in the description where you can send me my participation trophies. Or you could just like the video and subscribe. That would be cool too. Thanks for listening. Good night.
Question. What do you do when your best friend's number suddenly says, "not recognized," and her parents swear she never existed? Cool. Welcome to tonight's story. I'm not writing this for karma. I just need it out of my head so I can sleep, or at least stop seeing the little boy's tear-stained face. I'm 19. I like anime. And yes, I'm one of those people who still buys physical manga even though my room is already a fire hazard. So when Corvus Con opened up 30 minutes from my town, I grabbed the cheapest weekend pass, put together a half-decent Pochita hoodie, and texted my best friend Liv that we were going. She answered with her standard bet and a gif of a sparkly idle wink. We met in year 9 drawing fan art behind the gym, so cons are our thing. The first weird moment happened at registration. I'd printed my QR code at home because my phone screen has a permanent crack like a tiny lightning bolt, and scanners hate me. The volunteer, girl with acrylic nails, pastel bob, and those cat eye contacts, barely looked at the paper. She slapped a wristband on me and said, "Welcome, Slayer," in this flat, not joking tone. I laughed like, haha, cute theme, but she didn't smile. Her contact lenses reflected me back as two skinny, nervous versions of myself. "Do we get a discount for exorcisms?" I asked. She blinked, then slid a brochure forward. "Floor 3 is closed," she said. "Construction." Except the brochure showed a big red block on floor 3 labelled Idle Training Experience. Demon Hunters Live. And under it, tonight only. Invite only. Someone had put a black line through it with a Sharpie. It bled around the edges. Liv wasn't there yet, so I killed time in the vendor hall. It was huge. Rows of posters, plushies, enamel pins, swords that were definitely not sharpened, and wigs piled like cotton candy. A cosplayer, as a pale shrine maiden, walked by with a handbag patterned in little white crows. I noticed it because the print was actually kind of cute. A repeating line of crows with their wings half open, like beckoning. The strap was fraying. She kept glancing over her shoulder, even though nobody was following her. I got a text from Liv. "I'm in. Black hoodie, wolf ears. Don't judge." I turned, and she materialized from a crowd of Genshin Impact characters like she'd been spawned. Wolf ears, as promised, and a hoodie that said, "I paused my riz to be here," in cracked white. She had winged eyeliner sharp enough to send someone to A&E. "You see the invite-only thing?" she asked, as we did our awkward hello hug around her tote bag. "Anime is finally coming back, Demon Slayer. K-pop Demon Hunters. It's trending. Hashtag K Hunters Challenge, hashtag fell in love, and then it died, all that. My For You page is clogged with it. I thought that was just TikTok thirst traps. That's how they get you. She grinned. There's a live thing tonight. Floor 3. It's closed, I said, showing her my brochure. Oh, mine's not like that, she said with a smirk, wiggling the wristband she'd just gotten. It was the same as mine, grey fabric, plastic fastener, but hers had a tiny stamped symbol I hadn't noticed on mine, 3 equal lines inside a circle. Unhindered access, apparently. Some guy gave me this and said, "You're perfect." Creepy, but I'll take the clout. I checked my band. No stamp. We hit Artist Alley, bought stickers we didn't need, posed for a photo with a guy dressed as an unhinged school mascot, and then got swept into a panel called The Music Behind the Magic. It was advertised as a talk about composing for anime, but the panellists all wore the same matte black windbreakers, and the slides were just looping B-roll of Soul at Night. Every question got the same rehearsed answer. We trained to protect audiences. We harmonized the dark out of the room. People clapped like seals. I clapped too because it felt like if I didn't, I'd be the only one. Liv squeezed my knee under the chair. You feel that? What? She tilted her head toward the ceiling. The room hummed, not with the AC, but like a faraway choir warming up through a wall, one note held too long. It got under your molars the way a dentist's drill does. I covered my ears, and it didn't help. When we shuffled out, a staffer in a red lanyard stood in the hallway with a clipboard, smiling too hard. "Everything going well?" he asked each passerby. "Finding your way okay?" His eyes didn't move when he smiled, like the expression was stapled on. Liv nudged me. "Floor 3. I'm not allowed in, I'll get kicked out." She pocketed her phone. "I'll be your lawyer." We tried the main stairwell first. A strip of yellow tape crossed it with no access in block letters. A volunteer sat on a metal chair at the landing scrolling his phone. He didn't look up when we passed, but when we set a foot on the first step he said, without raising his head, "Closed." "What's on floor 3? I asked. "Nothing for you, darling." He finally glanced up. His pupils were weirdly dilated, barely any iris. "Renovations." "But the Demon Hunters show is there tonight. Only the marked." He went back to his phone. Liv mouthed "security door" at me, and we looped around the building. Past a row of arcade cabinets that were definitely not licensed. Past a merch booth selling shirts with "I survived Corvuscon" in bloody letters that felt, in retrospect, sarcastic. We found a fire door propped with a wedge of folded cardboard. Above it, a red exit sign flickered even though it was the middle of the day. "Don't think about how illegal this is," Liv said, and pulled the door open. Concrete stairs. Fluorescent lights, with that faint strobing you only notice if you look at them too long. We went up one flight, then another. The hum from the panel followed, louder. It made the hair on my arms lift. At the top, another door, unlabeled. I pushed. It gave with a sticky gasp. We stepped into a hallway with a low ceiling and carpet the colour of chewed gum. The air smelled like fabric spray and burnt sugar, like someone had doused a fire with a bottle of perfume. The first door on the right was cracked open. Inside, a half circle of folding chairs faced a makeshift stage lit by 2 clammy spotlights. A handful of people sat in the chairs with posture like puppets. On stage, girls stood, heads bowed, idols, or trying to be. Glass skin, shiny hair, jewellery that caught the light like fishhooks. A fourth person in a headset whispered to them, then counted down on fingers. 3, 2. They snapped into a pose with impossible precision. The track kicked in, soft and syrupy at first, then dropping so hard it pressed on the base of my skull. I didn't know the lyrics, but my mouth still tried to copy them. The three girls moved in sync, steps that shouldn't line up with human joints. They clapped on the offbeat, and the claps didn't echo. Liv's breath tickled my ear. "It's them," she whispered, almost laughing. "It's actually them." "Don't be dumb," I said, but my voice was thin. "They're people." Except the girls on that stage looked exactly like the Huntrix, down to the impossible pastel hair, the poreless skin, the sharp, shiny eyes that only exist in animation. They weren't cosplayers doing a good job. They looked like they were the characters, slotted into real air like someone exported them wrong. Every micro-habit matched. The purple-haired leader's half-smile on beat 4. The red-haired girl's wrist roll before a spin. The shortest one's toe tap no one notices unless you've watched a million edits. It felt like my screen had leaked these animations into real life. Liv squeezed my sleeve. "This is like an open rehearsal, right? We could..." The guy in the headset turned and smiled with all his teeth. "Welcome," he said. "You're just in time for the warm-up." Audience bodies changed the math. "What math?" I asked. He lifted a finger to his lips, amused. "Shh. You'll ruin the take. People say you can feel when you're being watched. That's what everyone in horror movies says. But it wasn't that. It was more like the watching was a third thing in the room. Like the three girls, and the headset guy, and us. And then another thing draped over the ceiling, like the air had draped itself on hooks. The song slid into a chant. The girls moved with the kind of tight, snapping control you only get by bleeding for it. They smiled soft, then too wide, then didn't smile at all. The headset guy turned, scribbled on a clipboard, turned back. Someone in the chair started to cry without sound, tears slipping like he wasn't part of the decision. Liv's fingers were digging into my wrist. "We should go," she said, except her voice was thin, and her eyes were fixed on the one with black hair. She reached an arm out, hand slicing the air, and I had the dumb thought, she's pointing at me. Then the lights popped, actual pop, like a bubble, and everything went black for one breath. When they came up again, one of the people in the half circle was gone. Empty chair. Everyone looked at it, then looked away at the exact same time, like rehearsed. The headset guy didn't react. He said, "Again," and the four on stage reset. "What the hell?" I said. I reached for Liv's hand. She wasn't there. I didn't think. I just stood up so fast my chair scraped. "Liv?" Heads turned because of the noise, not because of her name. The empty chair in the half circle looked like a pulled tooth. Nobody was flinching. A girl to my left dabbed at her eyes without a sound, the way you clean a window so it doesn't streak. "Liv?" I tried again, louder. The headset guy appeared beside me. I swear he didn't walk. He was just suddenly there, close enough that I saw a smear of foundation on the cream edge of his earpiece. "Please keep your seat," he said very kindly, like a priest. His smile had a shape, a perfect oval, like it had been traced. "My friend, she was just here." I pointed at the empty chair, then at the aisle. My hand shook. Tall, black hoodie, wolf ears. What did you do?" He followed my finger as if we were both admiring a painting. "Oh," he said softly, and something lit behind his eyes, not surprise, more like relief. "Did she have a stamp?" "What?" "On her wristband." The mark. He wiggled his own wrist without looking. 3 equal lines inside a circle flashed on his band, debossed rather than inked. Some do. Some don't. Yeah. I looked at my own band, slowly inching my hand behind my back. She had one. Then she's where she's meant to be. My mouth opened and nothing came out. Heat crawled up my neck. Meant to be where? He glanced back at the stage. The 3 girls held a final shape, heads bowed, stomachs rising and falling like they'd run a race. The hum in the room had a taste now, penny metal on the back of my tongue. Please, he said, still gentle. You're disrupting calibration. Audience bodies change the math. You keep saying that. I could hear my voice going weird and thin. The version of me that's good at customer service wanted to apologize. The rest wanted to throw the nearest chair and see if anyone would bleed. What maths? Where is my friend? He tilted his head like a bird. She's contributing. Contributing to what? Balance. He said it like people say charity. His hand touched my shoulder lightly. A suggestion, not a push. If you're anxious, you can leave. Given that you're unmarked, I would suggest you do that. What? I looked at my wristband again, like maybe the stamp would magic itself there if I stared hard. Blank. I'm not. I shook my head. I didn't move. My knees locked. On stage, the pink-haired leader looked up through her fringe and met my eyes, and for 1 second, pure glee lit her face. Then it wasn't glee at all. It was stage joy, the switch-on smile. She clapped, just once. It didn't echo. I'm not leaving her, I said. And I didn't recognize my own voice. The headset guy sighed like I'd disappointed him on a personal level. If you don't have a stamp, you shouldn't really be here. But since you are... A ghost of a smirk appeared on his face, voice still sugar-sweet. Sit down or leave. If you linger, I'll call security. I'm not stamped, I said. And I'm not sitting. Then leave, he said, smile never cracking. Unmarked, I don't get to hover. I left. Not because I wanted to, but because every cell in my body suddenly believed him. The way you believe a fire alarm even if you don't see smoke. I didn't even know what the mark was, but I could help feeling a pang of resentment for everyone perfect enough to have one. I scanned the hallway, the adjoining rooms, the stairwell, calling Liv's name the way you call a dog that's pretending not to hear. Nobody reacted. I stopped people at random. A guy with a stack of posters, a girl adjusting in a wig, a pair of lads debating best openings. Have you seen a tall girl? Wolf ears, black hoodie. Shrugs. Polite smiles. Dunno, sorry. One of them glanced at my wristband like he was checking a ticket and lost interest when he saw it was blank. Near the elevators, I bumped into a woman with a convention badge turned backwards. She looked like someone's mum who'd tried to dress for the theme and got the colours wrong. Her hands shook around a folded leaflet. You okay? I asked, stupidly, because she clearly wasn't. My boy, she blurted. Have you seen him? 10 shark hoodie, hair like this. She flattened her fringe to show me a cowlick. He went to a special demo. They said it was safe for him to go on his own with him having that little stamp thingy. I swallowed. I haven't, sorry. What's his name? She told me. I won't write it here. Saying it made her cry in that quiet, leak-down-your-face way. We searched together for a bit, doing useless loops. Security told her to check lost and found. Staff told her the day was very busy, and she should hydrate. Then tried to sell us 70p bottles of water for £10 because they had 2 Goku stickers on the front. When she stepped away to call someone, I stood there and watched people flow around the space where a small boy should be. A stupid, mean thought snuck in. Maybe Liv bailed on me on purpose. Maybe she saw me kiss Gary Stevenson behind the bike sheds last Sunday. Maybe someone told her, and this is revenge. Let me panic, then laugh about it later. It felt exactly petty enough to be true when your heart's in your throat. I kept looking until the day burned down to its threadbare end. Hours slid. I forgot to eat. The popcorn smell turned my stomach. At 5, the dregs thinned. At 6, vendors broke down displays, bubble wrap popping like distant gunfire. At 7, the con felt desolate, bin bags open, bits of wig hair stuck to carpet, a single plushie abandoned on a windowsill like a lost cat. Liv didn't walk out with any of them. A tidy woman with a company polo intercepted me upstairs. We're closed. Load out only. My friend is missing, I said. She didn't come out. I'm so sorry you feel that way, she said smoothly. Have you tried the lost and found desk? She's not a fucking water bottle. Security hasn't reported a person as mislaid. Mislaid? I laughed once. She was here, then she wasn't. No one reacted. Your colleague said if she had a stamp, she's where she's meant to be. What does that mean? The stamps are for crowd flow, she said. It's a very popular activation. We triage for safety. She smiled, lacquered. If you'll excuse me. I'm not leaving without her. Something in her gaze clicked. We don't keep people, she said, word perfect. We keep the room. If you're concerned, please contact the email on your brochure. By 9, I went home because there was nothing left to watch but the inside of my own head. The blue evening felt fake. My hands shook all the way onto the motorway. I texted Liv all the way home, even though the messages hung like prayers on a hook. Call me. I'm scared. Wolf ears, remember? You promised me pizza after, please. My mum greeted me at the door. Hiya, love. You had a good time. I didn't look her in the eye, just plopped my bag down on the counter and flopped onto the kitchen stool. Yeah, Liv bailed. I think... Oh, love, you think she found out about Gary and the bike sheds? Mum! I exclaimed, exasperated. I stared at toast until it went cold. I tried to call Liv and it went straight to voicemail. Her stupid joke one, where she says, hello, and lets you ramble before the beep. I hung up on the beep like it had laughed. At 10:13, an unknown number texted. Your friend left early. She's fine. Thanks for attending. No punctuation, no signature. I called it. A recorded voice said, this mailbox is not set up. And then a void. I walked loops from my bed to my window, to the door like a Roomba with anxiety. Then I ran a bath so hot it turned my skin pink, and lay there until the water went lukewarm, checking my phone every minute like a rat hitting a feeder lever. Nothing. At 2:04, I started an email to the con address and got stuck on Dear because nothing after Dear felt right. Morning came like a bad copy. A notification popped. World exclusive. K-Hunters Episode 1, First Look. The thumbnail showed the girls on a stark training stage, light bars like a spine and a camera track cutting right through the center. I clicked. High production values. Glittering city. The 3 girls tore across a cold rehearsal set in perfect unison. Trainers didn't squeak. They didn't need to breathe. New fans will love the lore, the host chirped. Resonance harmonics. The camera cut a wide animated crowd of people in the bleachers. For a heartbeat, the lens skimmed a little boy in a shark hoodie with a stubborn cowlick. Hands in his pockets, frantically looking round with tear-stained cheeks. He didn't fit. My stomach dropped. It was like the mother from Corvuscon had given the lost little boy's description to the artists and animators, and they hand-drawn a carbon copy. Then the shot snapped back to the stage and a graphic splashed across the bottom corner. New Huntrix member, Livy. My skin went cold. It was Liv. Not centre frame. Just off the leader's shoulder, hair tucked into a hood, wolf ears flattened by a cap. The music swelled, the routine sharpened. Livy sang 2 lines in that glossy idle cadence and hit the choreo with scary precision. Toe tap on beat 4, shoulders tracking the count. Then the edit hiccuped, just a breath, and her face wasn't stage bright at all. Bare, lost, like she'd woken up in the wrong room. A blink later, the filter smile slid back on and she nailed the next call and response. I froze the frame and took a photo. It came out blurry, a smear of pink light. I rewound. It kept happening. One flash, she's scared. The next, perfect. Like a bad connection switching between 2 channels. The host squealed about goosebumps. Comments flooded. They're saving us. OMG, a new Huntrix. The timing. No one said, that's my friend. No one said, why? No one said, why have they drawn in a crying child? I scrubbed frame by frame. At 0:47, she turned her head, just a fraction, like someone called from far away. For one frame, the light hit her eyes and made them glossy. I thought of the half circle of chairs, the thread pulling everyone's chests. The way the headset guy said, we don't keep people, we keep the room. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. We're proud of her. I typed, where is she? Give her back. I'm calling the police. Green bubbles. No delivery. I dialed Liv's number, and the network told me, bright and cheerful, number not recognized. I stared so long, I thought I'd misdialed. Tried again, same thing. I went downstairs. Ma'am? My voice sounded like I'd borrowed it. Liv's on YouTube. She's been animeified. Who? She said, genuinely puzzled, wooden spoon in hand. Liv. Olivia. My best. I stopped because my body did a strange cold ripple. Don't joke. I'm not, she said slowly, eyes tightening the way they do when she checks the thermostat. She reached up and touched my forehead. You've gone white, love. Do you need to sit? I ran upstairs and rang Liv's parents. I've known them forever. Her mum answered on the second ring. Hi, sorry, is Liv. I'm sorry. Who are you trying to reach? She said. I checked I'd dialed the right number. Mrs. Ashford. That's me. I'm looking for Liv, your daughter. A puzzled beat. We don't have a daughter. I hung up. Maybe this is all marketing. Maybe the distraught mum was a crisis actor, and all the human counterparts of the new characters that have been popping up recently got NDAs and a tote bag. Except, no, that's not right. No one remembers Liv. No one. I think that's the part that keeps catching in my throat. Last night I watched the episode again. I told myself not to, but I did. She came on, and I stood close enough to the TV to count pixels. Liv smiled again, the half-borrowed smile. The cut twitched first, like the edit knew what her face would do before she did. The timing was too clean, like the show knew her better than I ever did. I know something is up. I can't prove it in a police report. But I have the hum in my teeth. A text from a number that won't answer. And a clip where background girls act like idols, and idols act like gods. I'm going to try again in the morning. I'm going to bring the photo and the wristband and my stupid shaking hands and ask a human with a badge to say the word missing out loud. But right now the episode is paused at 0:47 on my TV and my best friend is on screen. Everyone thinks they've written in a new character. But I don't think so. I think the creators of these new anime TV shows don't draw their characters. I think they make them from real people somehow. And I think Comic Cons are where they hunt. If you go to CorvusCon next year and a staffer tells you to flash your stamp for an invite-only training, don't. If someone stamps your wrist and says you're perfect, ask them why. And if you see Liv on your For You page, wolf ears tucked under a hood, don't duet. Don't stitch. Don't say Queen. Just turn it off. They are stealing people from conventions and making everyone forget them. No one has noticed. I guess it's the perfect crime. It would be easy, wouldn't it? People are born to be accepted. Even when people say they don't care, they do. So why not find your hunting ground? Separate the worthy from the not with something inconspicuous, and let them come to you. Because they would, wouldn't they? If you stamp a wristband and tell a girl she's perfect, she'll step forward, even if she doesn't know what she's stepping into. They may even bring their not-so-worthy friends along to show off. Imagine being told you're perfect. You know, I hate that somewhere inside me. I'm jealous. Hi everyone, thanks for listening. That one was written by me. I stupidly asked the kids what my next story should be about, and yeah, now I can't get that song out of my head. Bet you know which one I'm talking about as well. Anyway, if you liked it, please give the video a like and consider subscribing. It really helps the channel. Now for a random fun fact. That last chorus key change you hear in tons of anime/K-pop songs is nicknamed the truck driver's gear change. It jumps the key up to trick your brain into feeling a bigger emotional lift. Basically, your feelings just got auto-tuned. Good night.
It started how it always starts, with a sentence that sounds cute until it ruins your life. Mum, I need a la-boo-boo. That was Friday, just a normal, boring, grey-skied Friday. Rain on the windows, leftover spaghetti for tea, and my 8-year-old stomping through the front door like she'd just been assigned a divine mission. I blinked at her, still holding a cheese grater. A what now? A la-boo-boo, she repeated, like I was the dumbest human alive. Everyone's got one, Mum. It's like the toy right now, like Sunny Angel, but better. It has teeth. Teeth? She nodded so hard her ponytail whipped her in the eye. 9 of them, sharp ones, and big ears. It's kind of creepy, but in a cute way. Oh, and some are rare. If you get a ghost one, you get a wish. Or maybe you die. Sam says it's different depending on the box. Of course, Sam says that. Sam's the same one who told her toast causes amnesia. I wipe my hands on a tea towel. And where do these La babies live exactly? La-boo-boo, she groaned. La-boo-boo. They're blind box figures. You don't know which one you get until you open it. Naturally, we went shopping the next day. You say no to la-boo-boo, and suddenly you're the worst mother on earth, depriving your child of cultural relevance and plastic happiness. We went to Pop Mart. That place, it's like stepping into a haunted doll rave. Everything's staring at you with a smile that's just a bit too wide. She picked a box from the exciting macaron line, swearing it had good luck. We paid. She tore the box open before we'd even reached the car. Her face dropped. It's a common one, she muttered. Just regular la-boo-boo. The thing in her hand had greyish fur, 2 wide eyes, and a grin full of jagged little teeth. One ear looked torn. There was a weird smudge under its chin. I thought it was a paint flaw. She named him Boo. From that moment on, he never left her side. She talked to him constantly, not in a look how cute kind of way, but like a real, actual friend. Boo doesn't like carrots. Boo says Mrs. Langley smells like vinegar. Boo told me not to touch his teeth. I tried to laugh it off. Kids have imaginary friends. Some are fairies, some are weird little gremlins with fangs. But then one night I passed her room around 2 in the morning and stopped. She was sitting up in bed, straight-backed, cross-legged. Boo was in her lap, facing her. She whispered something, paused, nodded, whispered again. It was a full conversation, not one-sided, not playful, just eerie. The next morning, I found her in the garden. She was sitting beneath the big tree in the back corner. Her hands were in her lap. Boo was beside her. At her feet was a nest, ruined, twigs shattered, feathers everywhere. 3 small baby birds, dead, tiny bodies curled, beaks open. I gasped. "Oh no, sweetheart, the nest must have fallen from the tree." She didn't look up. "Yeah," she said quietly. Boo didn't like the noise they made in the morning anyway. Not angry, not sad, just a flat little statement, like she was commenting on the weather. That's when something inside me twisted. I wanted to throw that bloody doll in the bin. I didn't. Not yet. But then the feathers started showing up. A few by the windowsill, then some on the landing, then a small pile, damp, greyish, matted, under her bed. At first, I thought it was toy stuffing. Maybe she was crafting or ripping up something old, until I saw the beak. Tiny, crushed. That evening, I sat her down, gently, no shouting. "I found the baby birds," I said. She just blinked. "I'm not angry," I added, "but I need to know what happened." She looked down at Boo, then up at me. "He didn't like them. And did you?" "I liked them, but Boo said I'd be his best friend if I helped." That was it. No remorse, just loyalty. That night, once she was asleep, I took Boo. I wrapped him in pillowcases, sealed him in a shoebox, put that in 2 bin bags, and buried it deep in the loft under boxes of baby clothes. She'd never find it. The next morning, she didn't mention him. No questions, no tears, just silence. She watched me, though, like I was the one being studied. That night, I was curled up on the sofa, glass of wine in one hand, half watching some terrible dating show and finally breathing just a little when I heard her footsteps. Quiet, barefoot. I looked up. She was standing in the doorway, in her nightdress, holding Boo. My heart nearly stopped. He was filthy, bits of fluff missing, one ear torn slightly at the top, but it was him, no doubt. She stepped closer, eyes flat. "Boo didn't like that," she said quietly. Not angry, not scared, just letting me know, like a warning. I let her have him that night. I was too tired. And I guess the wine gave me a false sense of bravery. But the next day, I got a knot in my stomach, went up to the loft. The box was still sealed, tape unbroken, pillowcases intact. But when I opened it, it was empty. No Boo, just dust. I was done pretending. That night, while she slept, I found Boo sitting on her desk. I took him into the garden, soaked him in lighter fluid, and lit a match. He burned, and while he burned, I heard something scream. Not out loud. In my head, a high-pitched whine, like static, like teeth grinding against metal. The air around me turned heavy. The flames didn't flicker, they twitched. The next morning, she didn't leave her room. She was lying in bed, eyes open, unblinking. I stepped closer, and I felt something. Not saw, felt. A pressure in the room, like I'd walked into a mouth. I reached for her. She turned her head slowly and said, "You made Boo angry." Then her nose began to bleed. She passed out before I could catch her. She's been in the hospital for 4 days, unconscious, no sign of injury, no explanation. Doctors say her vitals are normal, that she might wake up any day now. But I know better. I came home to get her clothes the other day, and in her room, on the windowsill, Boo was back, clean, smiling, like nothing had happened. I didn't scream. I picked him up with shaking hands, walked into the garden, and sat him down on the back step. I didn't burn him. I didn't bury him. I just whispered, "Please, bring her back. Take me instead." He was gone the next day. The doll, the pressure, the noise. And yesterday I got some good news. She woke up. The doctors called it a miracle. I'll be bringing her home tomorrow. I hope. You see, I'm writing this down now because about an hour ago I developed a pounding headache, and just now something scratched at my door. Hi everyone, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the story, please like, comment and subscribe. And tell me, do you have a Labubu in your home? Where is it right now?
I didn't come here to disappear. I was pretty much invisible already. The flat got too loud in the way that empty rooms do. Every pipe a throat, every radiator a mouth. I was 39 and already felt like a ghost haunting my own furniture. I'd done a dozen jobs that left no dent in the world. Warehouse picker, night shift at the printers, 5 long years repairing cash machines. Every pay slip felt like a receipt for time I'd never get back. No friends, no kids, no reason to stay. So when I saw the vague ad in the paper, I thought, why not? Temporary, seasonal assistant required. North Cliff Lighthouse. Solo position. No experience required. How hard could it be? Just a light on a cliff that needed winding and checking, and someone to swear at the wind on its behalf. At least out there I'll be lonely on purpose. I told the harbour master I didn't drink. A lie. That I was good with my hands. True. And that I could handle nights. Truer than I wanted it to be. He looked at me for a long time, like he was measuring silence on me, seeing if it would fit. "You alright being on your own?" he asked, then quickly. "Not 'cause you're a woman. I mean, once you're out there, you're out there. There's no coming back until your time's up. Fog's worse this year. Claustrophobic. You'll taste it before you see it." He was right about that. Salt settles on your tongue out here like dust on a shelf. Even with the door bolted and the windows latched, the brine finds its way in. Tiny white crusts forming in the corners of the lantern room. But there's something under that. The air tastes metallic too, like licking a coin or biting a split lip. The first night, I learned the staircase by touch because the power tripped the second I plugged the kettle in. The cast iron treads were cold enough to sting. The trick is to lead with your palm, not your fingers. Saves you from cuts and splinters. Halfway up, there's a postcard-sized window. You have to lean close to see through it. And if you press your cheek to the stone, it'll steal your heat like a debt collector. Now I keep real thermal gloves stashed everywhere, and a thermos of coffee on the shelf. Next to it sits a logbook, angry, cramped handwriting, stretching back decades from what looked like hundreds of keepers. The entries read like prayers. Wound at 9:05, cleaned mantle. Horn at 12:30, 1:30. Wind southwest, 18 knots. Fog persistent, fog persistent, fog persistent. There's a comfort in tasks that have edges. Check the bulbs, wind the clocks, clean the glass. When the lamp is lit and the lens begins its slow rotation, the whole room changes, as if the tower takes a breath and remembers why it was built. The brass warms. The glass blurs and clears, blurs and clears. Every 70 seconds the beam passes and the world outside appears in a white slice, spray leaping from the black rock, the cliff path slick and mean. Onshore, the town is just a smudge of orange, the sodium lamps tucked into the fold of the headland. At first, I didn't care that I couldn't get back. I didn't want to go back. Out here, it's me, the machinery, and the sea making its long arguments against the cliff. Out here, no one makes you hurt. The horn is mounted lower, where the tower thickens like a throat. It isn't the cartoonish blare you hear in films. It's a deep animal note, more felt than heard. A pressure that rattles your ribs. When it goes, the glass trembles in its frame. The tea shivers in your mug, and you taste brass in your mouth. I sleep in the watchroom, on a cot older than my mum. Sleep is a generous word. The mattress has a ridge down the middle like a fence. I padded it with forgotten coats and flattened cushions from the room's only armchair. It's good enough. Better an uncomfortable bed here than an uncomfortable silence at home. I keep telling myself I came for the peace, but the peace here isn't quiet. The weather has teeth. The first week, I played games with myself to keep from thinking too loudly. I'd count the steps, 78 to the lantern room, if you skip the cracked one. I tried to drink my coffee before the next sweep of the light caught my face. I timed the horn blasts to the second, and reward myself with a biscuit when I hit 3 in a row. On the 5th night, I started hearing water where there wasn't any. Not the roar you'd expect from the sea. This was smaller, meaner. The sound a tap makes when you didn't turn it off quite enough. I hunted it with a torch, ear to the pipes, hands to the walls, following that thin silver noise down into the surface level where the stone smells like damp metal and mould. Dry. Everything was dry. But the sound threaded the night all the same. Just at the edge of thought. Like a song you hate stuck behind your teeth. I wrote it off as the wind working some loose sash. I logged it as if naming the thing would make it behave. 1010. Dripping noise. Source unclear. I was raised to be practical. To rely on myself. My father taught me to check the obvious things first. If a car won't start, jiggle the battery lead before you condemn the alternator. After the marriage ended, after I stopped answering messages that opened with, "Hey stranger," I started to measure my days in things I could fix. The light is good for that. If it doesn't turn, you wind. If it burns too low, you trim. If the horn fails, you pull the choke and try again until the note opens over the water like a door. Sometimes, between the horn blasts, something like quiet falls. You hear the tower settle, your blood in your ears, the sea rearranging stones below. Sometimes, if you let yourself, you can almost believe the fog is just weather. That it isn't watching back. On the 7th night, it came in thick. I tasted it on the stairs before I saw it. The air went soft and damp, my arms sugar-coated with salt. The lantern room fogged from the outside like a breath on glass. The beam pushed through and carved a tunnel of light in the murk. Everything beyond erased. The horn note wobbled, then steadied like a throat clearing. I don't scare easy, not bragging. You can teach fear to stand in the corner if you give it enough chores, but there's a kind of wrong that doesn't arrive with bangs and screams. It pads in, makes itself at home in the parts of your brain that keeps lists. It makes you doubt your own edges. Close to midnight, I was standing with my knuckles on the rail, watching the beam make its slow sweep, when I felt it. A change in the room that wasn't temperature or sound. A prickle at the nape, an itch in my teeth. That childhood sense that someone just said your name in a room you haven't entered yet. The light slid across the fog, and for a heartbeat the world sharpened like a knife on wet stone. The tunnel showed nothing but vapour and white noise, particles racing like snow in a torch beam. The light moved on, the room exhaled, my shoulders loosened without permission. And somewhere below me, out on the galley in that thick white, something tapped against the metal rail, sharp and deliberate. Not a bang, not a jump scare I probably deserved. 4 neat taps, patient as a metronome. I told myself it was grit or pebbles, maybe kicked up by the wind or flung against the rail from below. A stretch, but easier than admitting what it sounded like. I wrote none of it in the log. Instead I wrote the tasks, small anchors against large weather, cleaned prisms, checked bulb housing and backup wiring, horn, 12 AM, 12:30 AM, fog persistent. When you're alone long enough, your thoughts have your back. They say sensible things, sometimes. They keep their hands in their pockets. That night they were unusually kind to me. It's rocks, they said. It's wind. It's the tower stretching its bones. Nothing to do with you. I made another circuit of the stairs. Palms leading the way, the rail slick and honest under my skin. Back in the watchroom, I tried to sleep. The padding giving me no relief from the thin mattress ridge digging into my spine. I listened for the drip that had now become a lullaby and found none. So I lay there, awake. The horn beat the hours like a slow heart, and the beam kept time on the walls. I told myself I'd check the lantern glazing in the morning. I told myself there was no below me, really. Only air and the black percussion of the sea. I told myself anything that might make the hair on my arms lie down. But the next pass of the light brought the same electric feeling along the back of my neck. And the pass after that brought the taps again, metallic, rattling up through the rail in my hands. 4. Exactly 4. Like an answer. I didn't touch the logbook after that. I stood with the beam at my shoulder, the horn rattling my ribs, the taste of brass in my mouth. Very quietly, I counted my breathing until dawn made a weak suggestion at the window. The fog didn't lift, it just pretended to be thinner when the morning could see it. When I finally unlatched the door and stepped out onto the gallery, water beaded on my eyelashes and salt stung a cut I don't remember earning. Down below, the rocks were creased black, kelp combed flat by the tide. The rail where the tapping had sounded was empty, slick with damp, wearing nothing but a skin of condensation and a dusting of salt, the way it always does. I told myself a new lie, that sleep, and only sleep, would fix this. That night, the foghorn felt heavier in my hands. The note went out over the water like a hand laid on a shoulder, and for the first time, when it died away, I listened not for silence, but for an answer. By the second week, I'd stopped marking the days properly. The logbook was supposed to keep me straight, but the handwriting had already started to slip. Neat rows turning into jagged scrolls. I'd catch myself writing the wrong hour or repeating the same line twice, as if time had folded in on itself. I tried to blame it on sleep, and the truth is, I wasn't sleeping. Not really. I'd shut my eyes and hear that rattle on the rail, feel the vibration in my bones, wait for it to come again. Sometimes it did. Sometimes it didn't, which was worse. I thought I saw something stranger than the fog one early afternoon. A white bird on the gallery rail. Too bright against the mist. Very out of place. It tilted its head at me, sharp and knowing. It was the most unusual crow I'd ever seen. I tried to creep closer to get a better view, but it slipped back into the fog, as if it had never been there. I told myself it was exhaustion, but I kept waiting for it to come back. The fog never left. It thickened and thinned like a long-drawn breath, but it never let go of the tower. During the day, it was a dull white sheet, the sea and sky erased. At night, it pressed close, blackening at the edges of the lamp's tunnel, and I swear it pulsed with the horn like a thing alive. I started keeping a second notebook, hidden under my cot. Not the official log, just scribbles of things I couldn't bring myself to record in neat ink in fear of being branded crazy. Tap, 4 times, 2:15 AM. Heard footsteps on the gallery. Checked. Empty. Foghorn vibrated before I touched the choke. Something whispered back. That last one I tried to cross out so hard the paper tore. The strangest part, I still did the work. Bulbs checked, glass cleaned, gears wound. I still boiled the kettle, still counted the steps, still rationed my biscuits like a kid saving sweets. But the edges of my world had started to blur. Sometimes I'd walk the stairs and find myself at the wrong level, unsure if I'd gone up or down. Sometimes I'd catch a reflection in the lantern's glass and think there was someone else in the room. On the 9th night, I saw them. Not clearly, not the way I wanted, just a smear of shape in the beam's sweep. But it wasn't a gull or spray or a shadow, it was taller, straighter, a human outline standing where no footing should exist. Just fog and air and the drop to the rocks. By the time the beam came round again, it was gone. I didn't log it. I barely trusted myself to think it. The next night, there were 3. They stood at different heights out in the fog, far enough from the tower to make no sense, but close enough to see, perfectly still, perfectly wrong. My stomach turned like it was in free fall, but I couldn't move. I gripped the brass rail until my hands went white. When the beam passed again, it shifted. I couldn't be certain, but I'm sure it was a fraction nearer. I nearly choked myself on the foghorn cord trying to get the sound out fast enough. I prayed the monstrous noise would create sound waves powerful enough to disturb the uncanny patterns made by the fog and light. The note roared into the dark, shaking the tower. For a moment, I felt relief. Until all 3 figures lifted their heads at once, like the sound was calling them home. I didn't sleep after that. I couldn't. Every sweep of the light brought them back. Every blast of the horn seemed to tighten whatever tether was pulling them in. I sat with my back to the wall, mug of coffee clutched like a weapon, whispering bargains to myself. If they reach the glass, I'll run. If they step onto the gallery, I'll jump. If they make a sound out, I never finished that one. By dawn, they were gone. Through the night, they'd seemed to shift a little closer with each pass of the lantern, never quite reaching the tower, but always shrinking the distance. As the sun crept back into existence, they thinned and faded with the fog. And in their place, on the rail where they had been staring all night, the white crow perched again. He tilted his head, watched me in silence before vanishing back into the fog as if it had been bearing witness this entire time. By the 3rd week, I'd stopped pretending this was routine. The tower ran on its own rhythm, light turning, horn groaning, gears ticking, but I was the one falling out of sync. My hands shook even when they weren't on the rail. My coffee tasted like brine. My own reflection in the lantern glass startled me more than once. The second notebook grew messy. Sentences trailed into nonsense. Words scrawled at angles I didn't remember writing. Pages smeared where my hand had sweated through the ink. One night, I woke with the pen still in my fist. A line etched over and over, and it carved the paper. They're closer. The fog pressed tighter. damp clinging to my clothes. The whole tower felt smaller. I paced the stairs to keep myself awake, but more than once I reached the landing and couldn't tell if I was climbing up or down. Once I circled and circled, breath ragged, until I realised I'd been walking past the same window slit for nearly half an hour. When I leaned out to check, there was nothing but blank fog, nothing except the faint scrape of something against the stone. I stopped opening the logbook entirely. What was the point of writing bulb checked or gear wound when the real notes were carved into my bones? The figures returned night after night. Each time the sun fell, they were back in the fog, always starting from the same impossible distance as if rewound by dawn. And each sweep of the lamp drew them forward again. The figures were no longer just outlines. On the 12th night, the beam caught the pale suggestion of faces, blurred, waterlogged, but watching. Their posture was wrong, heads too still, bodies leaning just enough to look like they were falling without ever touching the ground. Each sweep stole another fraction of a distance. I swore I saw breath pluming in the cold when the light brushed them. The horn betrayed me worst of all. I pulled the cord, and instead of repelling, the vibration came first, shivering through the rails, crawling up my chest, and then they shifted, all of them, as one, like the horn had given them permission. I stopped blasting it for a time, but the silence was worse. I could feel them waiting for it, like dogs starved for a whistle. That was the night the white crow came back. Not at dawn this time, but deep in the hours before morning. I found it sitting on the gallery rail, feathers glowing faint against the lamp's beam. It didn't caw, it didn't move, just tilted its head at me, eyes as dark as the fog behind it. For a second, I thought if I leaned close enough, it would speak. I don't know why, but I whispered to it. I asked it what they wanted, asked it if it was here for me, asked it if I was supposed to keep the light burning or let it die. The crow blinked once, and then the fog swallowed it. By dawn, the figures had retreated again. The white crow returned with the morning too, perched on the rail like it owned the place. I'd started leaving scraps of bread for it. Offerings, maybe. I couldn't tell if it was an omen or a protector. But since the figures hadn't stepped onto the gallery itself, I let myself believe it was keeping them back. Hoping it was. But even after dawn, the rail seemed to hum faintly, like it had held on to something that wasn't mine. Not the horn this time, something else. I couldn't shake the sense the tower itself was carrying their presence forward, holding a trace of them that would only end once they were inside with me. By the 4th week, the tower didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt borrowed, or worse, shared. The air inside was never still. The walls had a pulse I could feel through my palms when I leaned against them. I'd wake choking on panic, certain something was in the room with me, a terror that makes you bite down on your own fist to keep quiet. My thoughts whispered that there was no need for silence, that I was alone. But the dread clawing at my chest told me better. That I was far from alone. I stopped pretending the figures came and went. They reset, yes, but the rail still hummed each morning, like it had carried something up from the fog. I knew they hadn't left at all. They were just waiting for a chance to start again. Every dawn felt like a reprieve I hadn't earned. There was no question of leaving. The tower sits on a rock cut off from the mainland. The supply boat long overdue. The cliff path drowned under fog. I tried the radio more than once, but the harbour master's voice never sounded surprised. Almost like he already knew what circled the lighthouse. Every call ending the same way. Him telling me to keep the lamp turning, then cutting the line. That's when the fear deepened. If he knew, and still left me here, then what chance did I have? I thought about the coats I found on my first day, hanging forgotten in the watchroom, too many for one keeper. I wondered then why they were left behind. Now I think I know. I imagine their owners running down these same stairs, pressing the same rails, whispering the same promise to themselves, till the night took them too. The white crow came back every dawn without fail, eyes fixed on me while I placed bread on the rail. The first time it ate, I thought I'd imagined it. The second time, I watched crumbs tumble from its beak and scatter into the mist. I didn't know if I was bribing a guardian or feeding a harbinger. But either way, I couldn't stop. The ritual mattered to me now. If I kept the crow fed, maybe it kept the gallery safe. Maybe. But safe didn't last. On the 15th night, I heard them through the stairs. Not outside, not in the fog. Inside the tower's bones, as if the sound was being carried up the iron itself. My throat closed, my torch beam shook so hard I could hardly keep the light steady on the steps. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but where to? Down into the dark? Up to the lantern room with nowhere to hide? Air was damp and sour in my mouth. Nothing there, nothing but the faint echo of weight where no one should be. I pressed my ear to the rail, and the vibration that came back wasn't the steady thrum of machinery. It was a rhythm. 4 steps. A pause. 4 steps again. I ran the rest of the way down, heart punching against my ribs, half expecting to feel a hand close on my shoulder. Every time I stopped to listen, silence filled the gap. But when I touched the rail, always the rail, it carried the memory of footsteps that weren't mine. A memory you can't scrub out. The crow didn't appear that dawn. I left the bread anyway, hand shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The thought of losing even that thin comfort made my stomach hollow with dread. On the 17th night, the figures were so close I could see the glisten of water running from their hair. They leaned against the fog as if it were glass, pressing towards the tower. When the beam cut across them, their heads lifted in perfect unison. Not fast, not jerky, just a slow tilt, like they'd been waiting for me to look. My teeth ached from clenching, my breath tearing at my throat. The silence between the horn blasts felt like held breath. Mine or theirs, I couldn't tell. I kept thinking, if I breathe too loud, they'll hear. By the 20th night, I'd stopped writing completely. The notebook sat in the watchroom drawer. All I had left was muttered promises to myself. Stay awake, keep the light moving, feed the crow. Don't let the rail go quiet. Because when the rail finally goes still, I think it'll mean they've stepped inside. By the 5th week, I was barely human. My body ran on seconds of sleep stolen at the desk, head snapping up at the smallest creak. I tried everything, piling coats against the door, wedging tools through the handles, even dragging the cot across the floor as if flimsy metal could stop but moved in the fog. None of it helped. The tower was never mine, never safe. Nights had become something I dreaded with a sick, sinking weight in my chest. I would sit staring at the lamp, wondering what would happen if I simply let it go dark. If I killed the beam, the figures might lose their path, but ships out to sea would lose theirs too. How many sailors would wreck against the rocks if I chose myself over them? The thought made me sick, but the temptation stayed. The tower itself felt like a trap. Every wall pressed inward, every stair twisted tighter. I barely recognised my own voice when I muttered to myself, raw and rasping from nights without rest. Coffee did nothing. Fear had chewed straight through the caffeine, leaving me wired and hollow. The figures no longer waited in the fog. They had crept beyond their usual stopping point. They pressed right to the edge of the gallery, only a sweep of the lamp between us. When the beam moved on, they shifted forward, bodies leaning into the metal rail as if testing it, weight dragging against the iron. Their outlines were warped by the fog, faces pale and waterlogged, hair plastered against skulls, clothes hanging in strips that fluttered without wind. Their eyes glistened too dark, too steady, fixed on me no matter how the beam moved. And worse, I recognized them. The pale features, the soaked uniforms, the warped faces were the same as the staff photos still hanging in the watchroom. Men and women that should have been long gone now stood outside, dripping and silent, staring in. I could hear the scrape now, groaning as if the rail itself might give way. On the final sweep of the lamp before dawn, I saw them on the gallery itself, right outside the window. One had its hand pressed flat against the glass, water trailing down its fingers, while another hovered inches from the door handle. I pressed myself against the far wall, too terrified to move, lungs locked tight as if even breathing might draw them in. Every time the light passed, they froze again, mannequins posed by a cruel hand, and every time it moved on, they edged closer. The crow came later that morning. I left bread with shaking fingers, whispered bargains I barely understood. Protect me, keep them off the gallery, don't let them in. The bird never answered, only watching with that tilted head, feathers glowing too bright against the grey. The harbour master stopped answering my calls, just static now hissing in my ears. Sometimes I thought I heard voices under it, muffled and distant, like others calling from the fog. I snapped the radio off and shoved it in the drawer with the notebooks. When I did, a loose scrap fluttered free, torn from a page not written in my hand. The handwriting was tight, frantic. It read, "The sea needs to eat. The lighthouse is the plate. The foghorn is the dinner bell. These figures are..." The line ended jagged, ripped short. I stared at it until the words blurred. I know tonight's the night they'll get in. They want me to go with them, to feed the sea, or whatever waits inside it. I have two choices: accept my fate and join the others, or kill the light and doom the sailors who trust me to keep them safe. The fog is thick and the cliffs are unforgiving. Even a seasoned captain wouldn't stand a chance without this beam. The advert was honest about one thing. This job was only ever temporary. But it won't end with a contract. It ends with me. Hi everyone, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. It helps me keep the light burning and the stories coming. Here's tonight's random fun fact. Did you know crows can recognize human faces and even hold grudges? Scientists found that they'll remember someone who wronged them for years and even teach other crows who to avoid. So maybe leaving bread for that little white crow wasn't such a bad idea. Good night. I've been thinking a lot about what I went through that night a couple of years back. I've never had the chance to process it. I think when you go through something traumatic or unusual, you compartmentalize it to the point where it feels like it happened to somebody else. That's what it feels like to me. Back then I was living in a suburb near Pittsburgh. I was making ends meet, but margins were slim, and the notion of owning my own house felt like a dream at best. I'd been dating a girl for 2 years, looking for the perfect time to propose, but I just couldn't find the right time and place. But my fortunes were about to change. I got offered a promotion at my job. I'd be a shift manager at a large chemical plant in a couple of weeks. But even better, I got an email about something that might be the perfect time and place for me to finally propose. I was subscribed to a newsletter for a particular singer-songwriter that my girlfriend and I both enjoyed. The first thing we'd ever bonded over was music. There was a promotional campaign where there would be a sneak release of tickets to an upcoming tour, and the first 30 in line would be offered backstage passes. I couldn't imagine a better place to pop the question. Maybe I could get a chance to do it on stage if I asked nicely. But it had to be a surprise, so I kept it to myself. I made up an excuse about going to see my brother and packed a camp-out kit to get in line well and early. The newsletter recommended all of those interested to be in line at least 24 hours ahead of the ticket release. Please be patient and understanding, the email read, and please, wait in line. I drove out there early Saturday morning. They'd arranged it as a sort of a pop-up store. It was going to have all kinds of merch, and by opening day there'd be plenty of people dropping by to get ordinary tickets. But I'd be one of those 30 who got the good ones, come hell or high water. It was awkward getting there, though. They'd shut down 3 of the roads for maintenance, making me zigzag between cones and waiting for traffic in opposing lanes to take a turn. There was an apartment complex nearby, but that had been tented up for fumigation. A couple of nearby stores were shut down after health inspections. All in all, it was just bad timing, and there would be no comforts. But I got a bunch of gear packed. I'd be fine. I had an audiobook, some TV shows, and a lawn chair with a slot for an attachable umbrella. I could sit out there for days if need be. As with most pop-up events, there was no big sign, and the location was closed with metal shutters out front. The only thing that showed that this was the place was a discreet little poster on the side of the door that read, "You made it." The newsletter had mentioned that particular poster. It was all designed in a way to make the release feel exclusive. I got there about 23 hours early, and my heart sank. There were already people in line. Luckily, I only counted 27, but for a short moment I was ready to throw in the towel. I got to the back of the line, did a second and third count, and breathed a sigh of relief. As long as no one cut in line, I was in the green. So I set up my chair, attached an umbrella to my chair, and got started on the first season of Monk. After a couple of hours, the line had grown to about 50 people before slowing down. Maybe those in the back were hoping people up front would either drop out, or maybe they hoped there'd be extra tickets. The email had mentioned that there might be a couple of extras, but it couldn't be guaranteed. But I was still in the green, so I didn't have to worry all that much. It wasn't an unpleasant place to stay. The building was facing away from the sun, and there wasn't any traffic nearby because all the maintenance. I think the crews had stopped working for the weekend because there was little to no machine noise. I didn't hear a single jackhammer or concrete mixer, just the ambience of the city and the murmur of the people in line. There was a bit of a tussle up front. This one woman was getting up and talking to people. She was hard to miss. She had this neon green band shirt and blue-coloured hair. You could see her from a mile away. She went down the line asking if anyone had any antihistamines, allergy pills. She was having some sort of reaction. Turns out, no one had any, so she had to head off to find some. There was a drugstore a couple of blocks away, and the guy next to her promised she could keep her spot, so she walked away, thanking those around her for being so understanding. Thing is, she never came back. Hours later, her spot was still vacant. By dinner time, I kicked up a conversation with a guy next to me. He'd arrived just after I did, so he was still among the first 30. His name was Rodney, and he had this lean metalhead kind of build. Arms covered in tattoos, and those kinds of pants with zippers that you can turn into shorts. It didn't look like his kind of venue. I'm surprising my girl, Rodney smiled. She loves this stuff. Same here, I said. I think I might pop the question. Congrats. Love to see it. He offered me a Coke, and I took it. He hadn't prepared himself quite like I had, so I offered him a pad to watch some shows while I listened to my audiobook. We shared a couple of stories, some snacks, and added one another to our socials. I chomped down on a cold burrito for dinner and took a nap. Rodney was on his phone talking to a friend for a bit. The people ahead of me were having a conversation of their own, and I only caught parts of it. They were discussing if there were 30 available tickets in total, or if there were more tickets given out to the first 30 people. Was there only one ticket per person? Because if all in line wanted 2 or more, that'd be over 60 in total. The email hadn't specified it, so they were a bit worried. I had no idea, but there was no point in arguing about it. We'd see in about a day. There was this one guy who was a couple of spots ahead of me that had to step out of line. He had a friend coming by to drop off some stuff, so he asked if they could hold his spot for a bit. It'd just be a couple of minutes. I saw him disappear around the corner, doing that I'm in a bit of a hurry kind of jog that polite people do. A couple of minutes passed, then half an hour. After a full hour, he still wasn't back. Isn't that strange? I said to Rodney. 2 people have gone to get something and none came back. Sure, yeah, strange, he nodded. But some people just say those things to get an excuse to leave. It's embarrassing to say you're bored, you know. I guess. It's just strange. I work at the hospital, he said. I'm an anesthesiologist. I know what people who crack under pressure looks like. They always shuffle away with a convenient excuse. You sure that's it? I asked. Nah, but I got no other explanation. Fair enough. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sounds of the city lowered to a mumble. Cars gave way to people walking their dogs, and in this particular neighborhood, there was a lot of those. There were a couple more people who got out of line and walked away, not to return. We were still well over 40 though, but I think some got cold feet as the city got dark. A couple of light posts from a nearby street cast long shadows across the pavement. I was having a nap when Rodney poked me. He looked confused. Some folks in the back are saying we're in the wrong line. They're opening some name brand store. There ain't no ticket sales. You shitting me? I scoffed. You can't be serious. A guy 3 steps ahead looked back. This ain't no store opening, he called back. It's an autograph signing. That kicked up a murmur. All of a sudden, the entire line was talking. There was some confusion about what we were actually doing out there. A lot of people were there for tickets, but for different artists. Some were there for a shop opening, an autograph signing, or a giveaway. A couple of phones were passed around and shown so we could compare emails. All emails were from different accounts, seemingly official enough to get past the spam filters. They all advertised different things, but they ended with the same line. Please be patient and understanding, and please wait in line. It became readily apparent that no one had the faintest idea what this opening actually was. A couple of folks just got up and left. Finally, the guy at the very front stepped out of line. I'm not sticking around for some fucking scam, he spat. I'm going home. You should too. A couple more people packed up but hadn't decided what to do. I was a bit on the fence about it. But as I watched that first man round the corner, I figured there'd been some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe they were doing several promotions at once. I heard his voice. He sounded surprised and a little angry. What is this? Then he screamed. A blood-curdling, ear-bleeding scream. It got quiet. Everyone looked at one another, trying to find an answer to what was going on. I got out of my chair to get a better look, but Rodney put his hand on my arm. "Hold on," he said, lowering his voice. "Don't go. We should call someone." He agreed, but we could see other people were already calling for help. The man from the front of the line never returned. There was someone in the back who called for help. A few people walked down the road to see if everyone was okay, but they never returned either. A patrol vehicle came by about 20 minutes later. 2 police officers walked up, asking questions. Everyone said the same thing. A man had stepped away, and it sounded like he got hurt. The officers did a sweep of the road, and when they came back around, they shrugged it off. "There's nothing here," they said. "You sure he didn't just call out to a friend?" There were a lot of raised voices at that. But what could we say? It wasn't illegal to step out of line and not come back. There was no blood or sign of a struggle. Maybe we hadn't heard what we thought we heard, but people were raising other issues, like the emails we'd been sent. It all seemed like a plot to trick us. That, the officers had something to say about. "No, it's legit," one said. We were informed that there'd be people waiting in line for some kind of event. They had no idea what the promotion was for, though. And even if they did, they couldn't disclose it. It was all arranged by an event promoter, who'd in turn been hired by someone else. All in all, there was nothing they could do but to wish us the best of luck and be on their way. As they left, I noticed them meeting up with someone walking their dog at the end of the street. They shook hands, looked at us, and went their separate ways. Rodney and I stayed up late. We decided we'd take turns sleeping, just to make sure no one took our things. I took the first shift. The line had whittled down to about 30 people by then. There'd been a lot of people trickling out after the uncertainty of what this was supposed to be. Of course, none of them came back. I didn't hear anything else, but there was this rising unease that there was something inherently dangerous about stepping away. I could hear a couple of people talking about it, that is, until a woman further back had enough. She'd been sitting quietly for a while, listening to people talk over her. "It's not a big deal," she groaned. "Look, I'll walk 1 lap around the building. I'll leave my purse here so you know I'll be back, all right?" Maybe she was tired or frustrated. Maybe she wanted to prove a point. She stepped out of line and rounded the corner with a huff. Judging by the size of the building, it ought to take her a couple of minutes at a brisk walking speed. But as those minutes dragged on into half an hour, it was clear she wasn't coming back. She'd left everything behind, so it was clear this wasn't voluntary. Something had kept her from coming back. No one would willingly leave behind their identification, credit cards, or phone. A couple of people discussed leaving as a group. Someone mentioned leaving while being on a phone call, to report back as they went. But no one wanted to take the risk. We didn't know what was going on, and no one was eager to put themselves on the line. Instead we waited, speculated, and murmured back and forth about what might be going on. Was it a trafficking thing? Gang-related? Or was this whole thing just a big misunderstanding? I woke up Rodney around midnight and leaned back in my chair. I told him about the woman leaving her things behind, and I could see something settle on his brow. It was a strange position to be in. We were either completely fine or in incredible danger. But which was it? Which made more sense? I had a nervous sleep. No dreams, just a stream of thoughts. I kept waking up for the dumbest reasons. A car playing loud music a couple streets down. A barking dog. Someone throwing away a bunch of glass bottles. Just everyday city noise. Rodney had slumped against the wall chewing on some licorice. When he noticed me watching, he pointed down the street. "They keep coming back around."
Who?
I asked. "Not sure. Some guy walking his dog every 30 minutes or so." "The same guy?" "I don't know. Maybe." We kept our eyes on the street, and just like he said, a man with a dog passed by. He was wearing a large coat and a baseball cap, and the dog was one of the larger breeds, possibly a St. Bernard or some kind of sheepdog. "Every 30 minutes, Rodney reiterated. "I don't think he's walking his dog." "So what's he doing then?" Rodney shook his head and took another bite of licorice. "Patrolling." It was the middle of the night when the police came back. 2 officers, same as before, walked down the line with an audible sigh. "Someone called again," they said. "What's going on?" A young man got up and pointed at the woman who'd left her things behind. The police scooped it up, checked it, and promised to take it back to the station. As they were about to leave, the young man asked if they could escort him to his car. They agreed. As he left, he looked back at the rest of us, holding up his phone. A woman he'd been sitting next to held up her phone in response. "I'll stay on the line until I get home," he called out. "I'll keep you updated." It seemed to go well enough, but as they rounded the corner at the end of the street, I noticed one of the officers looking to the left and raising his hand, as if waving at someone just off to the side. We all looked at the woman with the phone. She was hunched over, cradling it with both hands, listening through wireless earpieces. She'd say something occasionally, like a quiet, "Yes, I'm still here," or "Are you okay?" Then, after a couple of minutes, her eyes went wide. "Hello," she said. Dan, are you there?" There was no response. I could see the tears pool in her eyes as her hand started to shake. He'd promised to stay on the line. Something must have gone wrong. "They're picking us off," muttered Rodney. "Someone is picking us off." "But why?" I whispered back. "What's the point?" "Think about it," he said. "This whole block is basically shut down. Roadwork, maintenance, fumigation, renovations. It's just us out here. But why us? Why now? There's got to be a reason." Everyone was awake by then. We tried to figure out if we all had something in common. We all looked different, and we were all different ages. We were there for different reasons, and we lived in different parts of town. There was nothing readily apparent that we had in common. "Dan works at a bottling plant," the woman with the phone added. "I'm in retail." Others joined in. One was an airline pilot. Another was a bodyguard, a firefighter, a translator. All very different people in very different lines of work. However, we had one thing in common. We all had access to something. Rodney had access to pretty much whatever at the hospital. The woman working retail had access to influential private clients. The firefighter had control over who had what shift, and who would respond to what call. The translator could listen in on privileged information. I was no different. I was about to become shift manager at the plant. I could choose what and who went where, and when. "Is that it?" Rodney said. "Is that what we're here for?" "But what's the point of taking us out?" I asked. "This isn't hurting anyone but us." The man walking his dog was back for another round, but now it looked like he'd slowed down a bit. As Rodney talked, I saw him stop at the end of the street, giving us a long look. And his dog looked too. Somewhere around 3 a.m, a whole group of people got up from the back of the line. The idea was clear. They were going to rush out of there. Others protested, saying they could call people over to come help. "If we all call someone, we can make a crowd," a man called out. "We can leave as a crowd, and we'll be fine. "No, we have to spread out," someone else said. "We go different ways and we go fast. Some of us are bound to get out." Rodney got up too, but his voice drowned in the crowd. Things were getting heated and people were pushing one another. Angry fingers were being pointed. Phrases were repeated over and over and over. The argument was quickly turning into a shouting contest. "There's at least 8 people patrolling," Rodney tried to say. "I've counted. There's at least 8. At least 8. But no one listened. And as push came to shove, a group from the back of the line spread out and ran into the night. Rodney slouched back down against the wall, breathing heavily. We all held our breaths, listening. We could hear footsteps running down different alleyways. It started with a crash, like someone taking a tumble into a trash container. Then, one pair of footsteps stopped. Not long after, another stopped. And from a far-off corner, I heard this barking. A loud, growling bark. "No!" someone pleaded. "No, no, no!" There was no screaming, no gunshots. All the sounds just stopped, and no one came back. The guy from the back of the line called out to them, but got no answer. We were down to about 20 people. Some were calling home. Others were calling the police, but they weren't about to come back here for a third time. One called a taxi, but they couldn't find a place to park, so they had to stop at an adjacent street, which we couldn't get to. There was also this one woman with a face tattoo that asked to borrow a phone. Rodney handed over his. "I'm getting my guys down here," she said. "You'll see." "I'm done." She made a call, shouting angrily for a couple of minutes. After the person on the other end finally seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, Rodney got his phone back. About 20 or so minutes later, 6 very tired men came wandering down the street. I could see the outline of holsters inside their cheap jackets. "We're going," the tattooed woman called out. "Y'all can come if you want." A couple of people got up. I looked at Rodney, but he shook his head. "Suit yourself," she continued. "We're leaving." We watched them walk away and round the corner. I heard them starting a car and putting it in gear. There was music playing, something loud with a thumping bass. It sounded like they were about to drive away when I heard a bark, but it wasn't just a bark. It was more like a growling cough. Then a gunshot, then another. The sound bounced against the walls, ringing out over the city. I saw a couple of lights turn on in distant buildings. Then all was quiet again. No one wanted to go look. Some people screamed at nearby houses, hoping for someone to open a window and look our way. No one did. The line itself was in complete disarray by then. People were packing and unpacking, pacing back and forth, hoping some opportunity would show itself. I wasn't immune to it, but I tried to stay calm. Rodney helped a lot. He was a lot more calculated than I'd imagined when I first saw him. He counted the people walking by. He measured the dogs. He listened for repeating sounds. My mind was tired, but my heart kept my eyes open and frantic. "I don't get this one thing," I said. "There's a timeline." "What do you mean?" he asked. "They gave us a time this would open," I continued. "If they're just going to keep us here until they've picked us off, why would they give us an end point?" "There's got to be something to it," he said. "Some reason for this specific place, and this time. And what happens when it opens?" We looked at one another. Whatever was going on, there couldn't be anything good in there. Rodney brought up the idea of breaking into the place we'd been lining up for. A couple of folks were on board, but the front gates were barred shut, and the personnel entrance was on the back of the building. That kicked up all previous arguments about calling for help, or moving as a group, or running like panicked animals into the night. We tried to bend a piece of rebar into a makeshift crowbar, but we couldn't get it to work. The place was locked down hard, and we hadn't brought anything to break through. We couldn't do it. A couple of people thought about collecting jackets and making a line so we could pull them back if need be. The problem was, no one wanted to volunteer. "Nothing happens until we're out of sight," someone said. "As long as we're within view, nothing happens. So someone can go to the end of the street, look around the corner, and come back." We had a volunteer for that. A large guy in his early 40s. He brushed off our worries, grabbed his backpack, and went to the end of the street. We could see him the whole time as he called back to us. "There's a car here," he yelled. "The door's open, there's no one here." "Can you see anything?" Rodney called out. "Nothing," he said. "Not a soul." He turned to go back to us when he stopped. He looked to the side. There was a hint of doubt there. Rodney peered up at me, then back at the man. "I think the patrol's coming around," he said. "Any moment now." Suddenly the man started running back to us. By the time he reached us, 3 of us were up on their feet to catch him and slow him down. He was panting like he was having an episode. We looked back towards the street, where a person walking his dog had stopped to look at us. "That's no dog," the man wheezed. "I don't know what that is, but it's no dog." For a couple of seconds we all just stared at the stranger. There really was something unusual about that dog. Its back legs had a curious shape, and there was a shine to the eyes that I hadn't noticed before. Almost blue. A couple more people would crack in the following hour. One just straight rushed down the road. Another tried to leave, but was held back by the others. A couple tried to call people for help, or to have someone escort them to their car, but nothing came of it. One guy kept spamming the police over and over, yelling at the operator that if they were that upset with him, they were free to come down and arrest him at any time. By dawn, there were less than 20 of us still waiting in line. It was about 6 a.m. when I saw someone coming down the road. A woman with blue-coloured hair and a neon green band shirt. I poked Rodney. We recognised her. She'd been the first one to leave, the one who went to get allergy medication. "She came back," I said. "You sure?" Rodney asked. "You sure that's her?" "Positive," I said. "Same clothes and everything." She waved at us. She was smiling and a bit bouncy, like she'd had a good night's sleep. In comparison, the rest of us were nervous wrecks. "I heard there was trouble," she said. "I'm sure it was a misunderstanding." "What happened?" I asked. "Nothing happened," she insisted. "Pills made me sleepy, so I went home. I just came to get my things, see what's going on." I wasn't buying it. And by the looks of Rodney, he wasn't either. Others didn't seem all that sure, but a couple seemed to relax their shoulders a bit. Despite my reservations, she got a lot of people up on their feet. Maybe they really wanted to believe that it was all just a big misunderstanding. And yeah, it was convincing. She'd come back after all, but maybe she was some kind of plant. Or maybe it was just someone who sort of looked like her. About half of all the people who remained joined her. They left together, giving the rest of us a tired wave goodbye. Some broke down in tears. There was this one woman whose face has burned into my mind. She was completely beside herself, shaking like a dry leaf in the wind. "I'm scared, okay?" she cried. "I'm scared. I don't understand what's going on. I just want to go home." She was assured and hugged and led by the hand, and slowly but surely, they all wandered off down the street, and none would return. About an hour later, there were less than 10 of us left. Rodney shook his head as he looked from side to side. "No patrols," he said. "They've missed it 2 times. You think we can go? I asked. No, he said. Something's up. He shook his head as we looked down the road, only to see someone approaching. It was one of the people who'd been walking their dog. Except now they weren't just passing by. They were stopping at the end of the street. A couple more joined, blocking off the other exits. One by one, they bent down and let their dogs off their leash. I looked at Rodney. For the first time, he looked scared. I could see his chest rising and falling with little claustrophobic breaths. We were being closed in on from all sides. They fanned us out, he whispered. They outnumber us. What the fuck do we do? I whispered back. He got up, and I followed. Others were taking notice as well. But as we began to spread out, we could see the approaching people moving to intercept. Then, the barking. I'll never forget the moment the dogs stepped out of the shade of the surrounding buildings. They looked almost completely black in the shadows, but they remained equally black when they stepped into the morning light. They had this ink-black, slick skin. Their back feet looked like something from a bird, and the entire body was hunched over on all fours. It was more humanoid than I'd thought, and as they got closer, they stretched out. The smaller of them, at full length, was at least 6 feet 7 inches. One of them looked my way with a shark-like grin, scratching the pavement like an eager dog with long pointed claws. I looked back at Rodney a final time, and in a split-second realization, all hell broke loose. Someone made a run for it, only to be tackled to the ground. One of the dogs got them by the neck and bit down hard with a sickening snap. One guy tried to climb a light post, hoping he could get up to a window of a nearby building. 2 more creatures tore down the light post, breaking it with a snap as he came tumbling to the ground. They were picking us off one by one, killing us, feeding on us. A couple had time to scream for help, but the creatures targeted whoever made noise first. The 40-something-year-old man who'd gone out to the street earlier was tackled face first into the pavement and had those razor-sharp teeth dug into the back of his neck. My mouth tasted salt as morbid death smells crept up my nose. We didn't stand a chance. There were at least 12 of them, and they knew what they were doing. Rodney and I stayed by the wall, trying to make ourselves as small as possible. I got a good look at some of the dog walkers. A couple of them were complete strangers, but a couple of them I recognized from earlier. They'd been in line just like me and Rodney. Maybe they'd been plants, or something else entirely. The creatures were feasting. One of the handlers went up to the locked building and rolled it open as one of them walked up to me and Rodney. He looked us up and down as one of the creatures settled down by his side, snarling and drooling, starved and ready to pounce. The man adjusted his glasses, peering out from under his baseball cap. "We got any hatches left?" he called out. The building opened. I couldn't see what was inside from my angle, being pushed up against the wall. "All done," someone responded. "Got them all." The man looking at me and Rodney was maybe 30 years old, with a fashionable beard. Simple square glasses. I couldn't have picked him out of a crowd. He looked down at the dark creature and adjusted his nondescript baseball cap. "Which one you want?" he asked. "Which did you dream of?" I felt something to my right. Rodney reached out and grabbed my hand. Not because we were making a break for it, or to try some last-minute master plan. He was just scared, and when you're scared, you want to hold someone's hand. So he held mine. The creature looked us over. A hint of blue reflected at us from its deep eyes. We fumbled for the right words to say. Some plea. Some brilliant, last-minute monologue. Something to appeal to their sense of kindness and humanity. But the stranger with the glasses didn't move a muscle. He might as well have been shopping for groceries. And with that, the creature growled. It had decided. It pounced on Rodney. I held his hand for as long as I could. I didn't look. I remember the sensation of screaming, but I don't remember the sound. My throat turned raw. The muscles in Rodney's hand tightened, then fell limp. The man with the glasses took a step forward, shushing the creature. There, he said. It's okay. Dream well. Eat. Bone crunching, sinew snapping, meat, and the smell of hot iron. I closed my eyes so hard my skull ached. There was noise all around me. I didn't hear most of it, as I could barely make out anything over the sound of my own heart. There was biting and ripping, interlaced with the most casual-sounding conversation. "You got the shells?" someone asked. "No need. We're torching." "You sure?" "It's clear. We got a firefighter." I looked up. A couple creatures began to look different as they ate. Some had brighter skin. Some were shorter, fatter. I heard clattering as their claws fell off their fingers. Bones snapping as their legs straightened. Then the man with the glasses clapped his hands at me. "Hey," he said. "You can go." "What?" "You can go," he repeated. "We're done." I got up off the ground and cleared my eyes. A couple of people looked my way, and I could tell they weren't entirely convinced. Some were armed. I recognized one of them as the woman with the face tattoo. "You're letting me go?" "Sure," he said. "We got a full brood. We don't need you." "You can't kill people and walk away," I whispered. "You can't. You can't do that." He shrugged at me like I'd asked him what the time was. I stepped back and no one followed me. I glanced at the creature gnawing on Rodney, only to see that it had started to gain his features, his face, his gangly arms, and all the while, the man with the glasses calmly shushed it and stroked its back. The others were setting fire to the building, using a can of gasoline and a strip of newspaper. I only saw a brief glance of the inside. Black rock-like fragments littered the floor. Strange organic formations stuck to the wall in batches of 3 to 6. When he noticed I wasn't leaving, the man with the glasses casually waved a pistol at me. Not to shoot me, but to show that he had it. "Go on now," he said. And as the fire flared up, I stepped around the corner, and I didn't return. I came home in tears. I remember breaking down in the hallway, trying to explain everything all at once to my girlfriend. I told her about the tickets, and the plans I'd made, and the people I'd met, and the dogs, and the handlers. All of it. I tried to show her Rodney's socials, and as I did, I noticed he was posting. My heart skipped a beat. "Long night," the post said. It was just a selfie, posted 10 minutes earlier. He looked fine. Healthy even. But there was a little blue tint to his eyes that wasn't there before. No people went missing that night. Everyone came home, eventually. And from what I've read, there haven't been any incidents. Everything just keeps going like normal, like nothing happened. So who can I call? What can I even say? You can't report a person not being properly killed to the police. I even texted Rodney once, and he responded like it was no big deal. "I just went home," he said. "I'm fine, we should hang out sometime." I haven't agreed to it. I don't think I can. I don't even know what to think anymore. About a week or so after all this went down, I got a card. An apology card with a sad blue sunflower on the front. Inside was a handwritten note. "Sorry for the inconvenience," it read. There were 2 tickets to the concert, backstage passes. I ended up going. I proposed. I think I recognized a couple of people in the crowd, but I'm not sure. Now, years down the line, it all feels like a nightmare. I can't point to a single thing and say, hey, look, it really happened. There are no witnesses, and in the eyes of the law, no crime has been committed. But I know what I lived through that night. That'll stay with me forever. And I know this was violent and ugly and sick. But that email asked me to wait patiently, and maybe that's what saved my life in the end. Maybe I'm still waiting. But for what? Hey guys, thanks for listening. I've narrated quite a lot of Saturday's stories recently, and I think you'll agree his writing is absolutely amazing. I may be a published author myself, but honestly, I don't think I'm at his standard yet. If you'd like to check out more of his work, I've got a dedicated playlist for you. And if you fancy hearing some of my own stories, I've started narrating those too. They've got their own playlist, and it should be up on the screen now, or in a minute, or maybe a little while ago. I'm not very good with timing. While I've got you, it would be awesome if you could subscribe, maybe drop a comment with your favourite story, or give this one a like. It really helps get the channel out there. I'm juggling work, motherhood, and everything in between just to get these stories out to you, which is probably why half the time my coffee's gone cold before I get to drink it. And now for a random fun fact. Did you know the longest line ever recorded was in Poland in 2012? Over 45,000 people stood in line for a single cup of coffee at a festival, and some of them still didn't get served. Makes waiting in a horror story line sound a bit more appealing, right? Good night.
A few months ago, my wife Julie and I decided to start trying for a family. We moved out of the big city to a small Midwestern Minnesota town, not too far away from Grove City. It was time for a change. Hell, we even decided to stop smoking. We found a cheap, recently renovated flat. The entire complex was built in the 50s, but the apartments themselves had been fixed up recently. We were told by the landlord, absolutely stunning young woman, that most of the previous tenants decided to move out rather than wait for the renovations to finish up. The place was basically brand new. Our apartment was on the ground floor. We didn't want to think about baby-proofing a balcony on the 3rd or 4th floor, and we figured this would only be a stepping stone to get in our own house anyway. Julie had left the job as a high school teacher behind, while I'd gotten the job as a manager at a local warehouse. I'd already worked as a manager previously for the same company, so it was just a matter of finding a suitable transfer. The previous tenants had left us a gift. Sitting alone in the kitchen window was a blue sunflower. At first I thought it was plastic, but it was perfectly real. The colour was striking. It was still yellow in the middle, with black spots, but the leaves were a sparkling ocean blue. The flower pot was hand-painted, with a small landscape and a shining sun, and in plain black text it said, "The sad sunflower." "That's just too cute," Julie smiled. "We've got to keep it." I've never been able to say no to her. That big smile of hers could make me do anything. If she wanted to keep the sad sunflower, so be it. I watered it and turned it facing outwards. Oddly enough, it had been leaning inwards toward the apartment. I thought sunflowers were supposed to follow the sun. Julie just loved it. She already had a good feeling about this place. I wasn't convinced yet, but I figured it was just nicotine withdrawal. Over the following days I was getting adjusted to my job. I brought in a cake to get to know everyone. Their previous manager had personal issues and suddenly left town, so there was an urgent need for someone to step in. It was just great timing for me. Julie was still looking for a new job. There were a few schools nearby that she was going to look up, but we needed to get a second car first.
Money was tight after the move, so we decided to wait a few weeks before making any big purchases, so Julie spent most of the days at home. She'd been clear about wanting to be a stay-at-home mum once we had a family of our own, so maybe she was trying to get used to the idea. Call it a practice run. She would do a lot of housework and handle the groceries. I usually cooked dinner, but she would handle the dishes. One day after coming home from work, I noticed her humming a strange tune while she was watering the sad sunflower. I'd never heard it before. You're my friend, I'll sing your tune, a setting sun to rising moon. I ask you, buddy, buddy blue, won't you be a sunflower too? I took off my shoes and joined her in the kitchen. She'd hum the tune over and over, checking every leaf on the sparkling blue plant. It was leaning inwards again, away from the sun, almost like a dog asking for a head scratch. "What's that song?" I asked. "What song?" I asked her several times over. She honestly didn't know what I was talking about. I read it out loud, but she just blanked. The same way I could have sworn I heard her singing it, she swore she hadn't. I turned the plant back outwards, towards the sun. The next day, it was leaning back in. That tune started to haunt me. I could hear Judy singing it, in the shower, while doing the dishes, while tying her shoes. Over time, she came to accept that she was singing it, but she wasn't doing it consciously. It was like a brain teaser. "I must have heard it somewhere," she said. "Some kind of nursery rhyme." I couldn't blame her for having her mood occupied with kid stuff. It was pretty much all we talked about. We'd just started trying for a baby, and it would just be a matter of time before our lives would change forever. It was stressful, but exciting. More of an adventure than any bungee jump could ever replicate. Julie got a part-time teaching job at the local high school. One of their teachers was going on maternity leave, so they needed someone to step in and help out with social studies. We didn't have a second car, but one of the guys I worked with lived just down the street, so we started to carpool. I thought having some independence and getting out of the apartment would do Julie some good. It did, at first. She had so much energy when she got home after a long day. Still, she would beeline towards her sad sunflower, take care of it, water it, and only then would she concentrate on anything else. She didn't even take her shoes off. That plant was, by far, her most favourite thing in the world. Honestly, I didn't get it. She still hummed that melody. "You're my friend, I'll sing you a tune, a setting sun to rising moon." I once got back home early, only to notice the sunflower was gone. Julie wasn't home from work, and the thing was just gone. Later, when Julie came home, it all made sense. She held that thing under her arm as she walked through the door. It was almost like someone holding a baby. She had a grocery bag swinging underneath. I'll be the first to admit I didn't handle it very well. "You're bringing it to work," I accused. "What is going on with you?" "It's nothing," Julie sighed. It's like having a safety blanket. It doesn't mean anything." "Then throw it away." She stared at me in disbelief. I took a step forward to help her with the groceries, and she recoiled. Her eyes were dilated, and it looked like she was on the edge of a fight-or-flight reaction. I just stopped. "What the hell?" "Don't you dare," she spat. "Don't you dare." After that, Julie slept on the couch for a couple of nights. It was her idea, not mine. She would give me these long, accusing looks from across the room whenever I was in line of sight of that damn plant. It was still facing inwards. I'm sure the damn thing was moving, or turning back every time I tried to face it outwards. I started hearing things at night. I once peeked out of the bedroom to see Julie water and prune the plant in the middle of the night. She'd sing to it over and over, the same rhyme. In the moonlight, it looked like she didn't even blink. 2:30 in the morning, and there she was caressing the leaves. There were other things as well. Foul-smelling dirt in the wastebasket, dark blue sunflower seeds scattered around the bathroom. I didn't know what to make of it, but Julie and I weren't really talking anymore. She had no problem talking with the plant, though. I ask you, buddy, buddy blue, won't you be a sunflower too? It all came to a boiling point the day when Julie didn't come home from work. Of course, she'd taken the plant with her. I tried her phone, but she didn't pick up. At 7 in the evening, I was getting seriously worried. I called the school where she worked, but of course it was closed. Instead, I called her co-worker, Miss Marriott. "This is Claire," she answered. "Hey, I'm calling about Julie. This is her husband," I said. "Sorry about calling you like this." "No, it's fine. Is everything all right?" "When Julie came to work, did she seem okay? Did she do anything unusual?" I'm not following. "Well, like, did she bring—" "No, I'm sorry. What I meant, what do you mean with came to work?" Apparently, Julie had quit her temp job about a week ago. I rushed down the street to my co-worker and asked to borrow their car. They didn't mind, and even asked if there was anything they could do to help. I didn't even know where to start, so I just thanked them and left. I drove around town for hours, checking every open store, every alley, every side road. Finally, I stopped for gas. As I went inside to pay and get a soda, I noticed the clerk humming a tune. She was just reading a magazine and humming away. Barely noticed I was even there. I'd recognize the melody anywhere. "Where did you hear that?" I asked. She just looked up at me like she'd woken up from a nap. She had no idea what I was talking about. I just paid and left, figuring Julie had been there. She was close. There was a small dirt road not too far from the gas station leading down to a fishing lake. All you could catch there was smallmouth bass, but it was a great little place to have a barbecue. I drove down the road following a hunch. It paid off. Just a few minutes later, I saw our car on the side of the road. The door was still open. Lights were blinking. It was swarming with mosquitoes. I parked alongside it and brought out a flashlight. There was a small trail through the woods leading up to a clearing next to the lake. It was the only place she could have gone unless she was mindlessly going random directions. I didn't have to go far to hear her. There was no wind, so even a slight noise could be heard from far away. I ask you, buddy, buddy blue. The same damn rhyme. Next to the trail, I noticed small, bright stalks reaching out of the soil. I could guess what kind of plant they were, even though they hadn't bloomed yet. Won't you be a sunflower too? I stepped into the clearing. I could barely see them all with a tiny cone of light. There were hundreds of them spread out in a circle. In the middle was Julie, reciting her rhyme over and over. She'd taken off her clothes, and I could see mosquitoes swarming her. It didn't seem to bother her. The melody in her song was gone, turned to a mantra. She was standing with her back towards me, holding her hands in front of her like a cup. She suddenly made a harsh coughing sound and bent forward. I took a few steps and stopped. Every single sunflower turned towards me, blue leaves vibrating like rattlesnakes. Julie turned around. Sunflower seeds were dripping from her mouth. In her cupped hands, she had the same kind of foul-smelling tar dirt that I found in our wastebasket. Her eyes were bright blue. Her teeth were stained black. You're my friend. I'll sing your tune. Sunflower seeds kept falling from the edge of her mouth. She kept coughing, almost choking. She was constantly on the edge of inhaling the seeds into her lungs. Her singing voice was broken and struggling. Still, she smiled. The same smile that could get me to do anything. A setting sun, the rising moon. The flowers turned back towards her, vibrating. Tiny leaves clapping in appreciation. I didn't know what to do. I was horrified. I was angry. I was desperate. I froze. Julie walked up to me, holding a large seed between her lips. She took my hands and leaned forward to kiss me. I've never smelled anything so putrid in my life. I think that's what snapped me out of it. It was the only time I ever refused a kiss from her. I'm not proud of what happened next, but I didn't have a choice. I grabbed Julie and threw her over my shoulder. She protested wildly, scratching and beating me. She had to stop over and over to throw up more seeds and dirt. I just ignored the wounds on my neck and scalp and kept carrying her. I locked her in the back seat of my car and turned on the child locks. As I shut the doors, she was hysterical, screaming and flailing in the back seat like a possessed toddler. I got a jerry can from the car. It was half full. That was enough. I stopped smoking the day we moved into our new apartment, but I still had my lighter. When I stepped back out into the clearing, I could hear something moving. I ignored it. I dumped every drop of gasoline I had and just set the whole field on fire. I left the lighter behind. As I stepped away, I could hear things popping in the grass, blue leaves crinkling to ash, and somewhere there were tiny screams. Tiny, bright screams. Something was burned alive in that field, and I don't want to think about what it might have been. It sounded human. Wrong, but human. Julie recovered in a couple of days. The doctors figured she'd been eating seeds from the sunflower, and that it had contained some kind of poison. The doctor couldn't find anything abnormal about her blood levels, and after a couple of days of rest, she was back to her old self again. Her eyes were back to their ordinary brown, and her smile was as genuine as ever. She was so sorry for all the trouble she'd caused, and she had a hard time remembering what happened. To her, it was all a bad dream. We've since gotten pregnant. Over the months, we've baby-proofed the apartment, but we're already looking to move to a house. Julie got back her job as a temp. She might be looking at an extension at the end of the school year. She's quite popular. We're thinking about the name Danny with a Y for a boy, or Danny with an I for a girl. We're not sure yet. There's only one thing that still worries me. The ultrasounds. Julie's been taking them while I'm at work, but she's shown me every single image. They look perfectly fine, but on the last one, there was something that didn't add up. In the corner of the picture, the date was set to 5 years ago. I'm suspecting she's not showing me the actual ultrasounds, or that she hasn't taken them. I don't know what she could be hiding. And sometimes at night, I hear her humming. The same damn tune. You're my friend, I'll sing your tune. A setting sun to rising moon. I ask you, buddy, buddy blue, won't you be a sunflower too? Hi everyone, thanks for listening. This story, The Sad Sunflower, was written by Saturdad. I'm actually in the middle of recording a playlist dedicated entirely to Saturdad's work. So if you like this one, stick around, because there's plenty more coming. And as always, here's your random fun fact. Sunflowers don't just follow the sun. Young sunflowers actually move their heads from east to west during the day, then turn back east overnight to wait for the sun to rise again. Basically, they've got better time management than most of us. Good night. It was a long and lonesome road, and the night never seemed to end. No matter how long I sat down to catch my breath, and no matter how long I walked, the dark just seemed to get darker. You lose all perception of time when you move forward, and nothing seems to change. At some point, I stopped dead in my tracks. There was a person standing on the road ahead of me. It vaguely resembled a woman dressed in a blue kaftan. I called out to her. I asked her who she was, where I was, and if she could help me. My throat was getting dry. I hadn't brought any water. I got no response, and she just walked away. I followed. The forest opened into a clearing, an open space with log cabins, garden plots, apple trees, and a small jetty for fishing. The roofs were partly covered in solar panels, and there was a communal tool shed down by the riverbank. There was a water pump at the edge of the clearing, so I figured the river water wasn't safe to drink. I could tell there had been a community of people living here at some point. Right now, however, there was no one around. I hurried over to the water pump and pumped it a few times. Having that ice-cold groundwater pour into my hands was beautiful enough to make me cry. I drank myself nauseous. Leaning against a birch tree to catch my breath, I noticed that the woman with the blue kaftan was gone. I was left there, among the cabins, on my own. All the cabins were open, 2 rooms each, 1 bedroom and 1 storage room. There was a communal kitchen in one of the cabins down by the river. I couldn't help but to imagine some sort of hippie collective living there, sharing stories by the campfire. I found a bed, complete with a blanket and pillow. All I had to do was brush off a few stray May beetles. The next day, I woke up with this awful headache, like something had moved inside my head. Maybe it was exhaustion from the previous night, or maybe I'd caught something. I could still taste the ammonia from the previous day, where I'd lost both Evan and John to that thing. But having no one to talk to, there was no reason to put my experience into words. I was in survival mode, and I decided to look through this place thoroughly. It became apparent that this was a collective once named St. Gall. At least 8 people used to live here, according to the number of beds available. It wasn't entirely clear what made them leave, but it must have happened soon and suddenly. The woman with the blue kaftan was still nowhere to be seen. The place was stocked to the brim. Canned goods, fresh preserves, all kinds of dried meat. A shelf full of vacuum-sealed smoked fish. These people were self-sufficient. There might not be any plumbing, but there was a makeshift shower, provided you'd heated up some water beforehand. The solar panels were linked together into a series of batteries, all meant to power the kitchen. There was even a radio and a TV. Heating was done with wood furnaces. There was a well-used chopping block by one of the garden plots, bearing witness to many hours of diligent woodcutting. It took me the better part of the day just to get a good idea of what this place had to offer. By dinner time, I figured I could probably stay there for months on end, if I wanted to. I might be able to ride out the entire year walk right there, at St. Gall. The apple trees were one thing, but the woods were covered in blackberries and wild plums. Hell, if I could figure out how to fish, I could stay there indefinitely. By dinner time, I dug out one of the many bags of rice from storage. I used some red cabbage preserves along with some salted fish. Some kind of lake sturgeon, I think. I seasoned it all with some rock salt and basil. I spoiled myself a bit. It made me think back to the time before I left my home in Maryland. I used to cook for my mom and stepdad 2 times a week, and I'd had ambitions to go to culinary school once. They just refused to let me do it, saying they wouldn't support my ambitions until I made a conscious effort to abandon my perverse life choices. Backwater fucking assholes. As I sat down by the jetty, watching the sun creep lower and lower with a warm bowl of food in my hand, life didn't seem all that bad. I could get used to it. For the next few days, I just went into my own head. Not talking to anyone and having no contact with the outside world really puts things into perspective. Time becomes your own, and everything you do is all yours. There is no one to do anything for but yourself. No compromises and no excuses. I'm not sure I've ever felt so free, and honestly, after staying at Evan's place for weeks on end, I could use the space to stretch out. Still, thinking about John and Evan made my stomach sink. I tried not to imagine what they were going through. Were they stuck on the other side? Were they even alive? Still, even with all the comforts I could ask for, there was a certain hour at night where I could swear something was off. A cold shiver slithered up my back, as if someone was looking for me. Considering what I'd seen these past few months, I couldn't tell if I was being paranoid or cautious. It felt like the entire world was coming for me, albeit slowly. I found myself waking up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. I'd sneak up to the windows to look outside, but there was nothing there. Just a dark forest and a hooting owl. Still, there could be something there. Maybe I just couldn't sense the obvious. The lady with the blue kaftan was still nowhere to be seen. I started noticing little things changing during the day. Footsteps in the garden plots. The bucket near the water pump overturned. Nothing of consequence, but these little things that kept reminding me that I wasn't entirely alone. Someone was stalking the night. I decided I needed answers. The uncertainty would drive me mad either way. The calendar had crossed into early June when I found myself awake one night. I'd found a powerful flashlight and a hunting rifle. I planned just to observe and find out what was skulking around at night, but I wanted some protection just in case. At the very least, I'd see if I needed to protect myself. Hours passed, and there was nothing, not a peep. I started to think I was imagining things. Maybe the footsteps by the garden plot had always been there. I stepped outside to take a leak, bringing my rifle and flashlight along. After I finished my business, I took a short walk. A patrol, just to make sure I could sleep soundly. A faint breeze slipped through the birch trees. Dry branches creaked, playing tricks on my ears. But still, there was nothing. But as I turned back to the cabin, that shiver crept right back up my spine. Something was different. Had there always been a scarecrow in the garden plot? From afar, it just looked like a vaguely human pile of hay stuffed into a flannel shirt and an old pair of jeans. The more I thought about it, the more sure I was. This hadn't been there before. I'd met them before. These things hiding in plain sight, trying to pass off as everyday items. Still, it worried me. For each one you saw, there could be 30 more hiding somewhere. I raised my hunting rifle and took aim. "This won't end well," I said. "I know you're here." There was no response. I held my breath, trying to keep a steady aim. There was a slight flash as little blue eyes reflected in the cone of my flashlight. Then, a snap. I turned around. Dozens upon dozens of scarecrows, lining the edge of the forest. There wasn't enough ammunition to even attempt to take this fight. Something creaked, and as I turned around, the scarecrow in the garden plot was closer. They were back, and this time I didn't have Evan to protect me. I backed away, trying to look back and forth between the edge of the forest and the garden. An itchy trigger finger made the gun go off, blowing a hole in one of the scarecrows. There was no reaction, just a slow, silent pursuit. I backed out to the edge of the jetty. It was the only place where I could see them all. Looking at them seemed to make them stop, if only for a short while. Some sort of instinct. Still, every blink drew them closer. My breath grew shallow as my panicked mind tried to find a way to make the bullets last. Maybe I should save one for myself. With every blink, they changed. Some came closer, others changed shapes. Scarecrows, buckets, gardening tools. One of them looked like an old man in overalls, staring at me from afar. Maybe this had been the woman in the blue kaftan. Maybe they'd lured me here. This might be the end of the line. As they took their first step onto the jetty, I just started firing. It didn't help. With every shot, my ears rang, and every time I closed my eyes, they came one step closer. As my rifle gave out a hapless click, I realized there was nothing left to do. I could dive into the lake and make a break for it. That was all there was left to try. I turned around, only to find myself face to face with the woman in the blue kaftan. She was somewhere in her early 50s. She had this long black hair and deep green eyes. She was barefoot, but didn't have a speck of dirt on her. She didn't blink. I recoiled, shocked to have someone just appear out of seemingly nowhere. She hadn't been there earlier, and there was no way she could have climbed up on the jetty. She was dry as salt, and I hadn't heard a thing. She held out a hand. "They won't harm you, you know," she said. "They can't. They can't. They fear you," she said. "They can't harm you. Not anymore. How would you know?" I took her hand, and she pulled me to my feet. "I can't tell a lie, dear." I turned around, and there was nothing left. Just a few footsteps in the dirt from something that had tried to resemble a man in overalls. She led me back to my cabin, where we sat down at a small table. I was still feverishly clutching the hunting rifle. It didn't occur to me that I was out of danger. Maybe I wasn't. "Thanks for, helping me out," I said. What's your name?" "That's not important right now," she said. "But I'm curious. Who are you, and why have you come here?" She was right, of course. Names weren't important. Not right now. "You want the long version or the short version?" "I want whatever version you're willing to share." We talked for hours. She seemed to know all about the creatures masquerading as items. She also knew about the many other things I shared with her. Everything from a world beyond our own to the church at the bottom of Frog Lake. This woman knew all about it. If anything, it seemed that she was the one looking to see what I knew, not the other way around. After explaining what finally led me to come to St. Gall, that cryptic suggestion to go north, she interrupted me. "You seemed to be year-walking then," she said, "willingly leaving the safety in numbers to pursue your ambition." "I just sort of stumbled into it," I admitted. "It was my dad. I sighed. It had all been this stupid, nonsensical gesture. Like what I did could somehow bring us closer. Bring some kind of peace to him. "It was a kind gesture," she said. "But sometimes things don't go the way we planned. A slip of the tongue, a moment of weakness that might be all it takes to send us spiraling into pain. You seem to know an awful lot about this, I said. Do you know what happened to the people who lived here? She thought about it for a while, looking out the window. A slip of the tongue, she said. That's all it takes. We called it a night and agreed to talk in the morning. Strangely enough, I still had that feeling that something wasn't quite right. That shiver down my spine never went away, and I could feel my body tensing up. The next morning I found her in the kitchen. She was making hard-boiled eggs. Strange, I thought, since there were no chickens around. No, wait, there'd always been chickens. I had the distinct memory of there always being chickens there, but I just hadn't interacted with them previously. But why wouldn't I? Odd. I didn't think about the eggs, I said as I entered the kitchen. I must have forgotten about the chickens. There have always been chickens at St. Gall, she said, wiping her nose. Well, I suppose so. You can't tell a lie, right? She just shook her head, without the hint of a smile. As we had our breakfast, she looked up from her plate. She'd been silent for a few minutes, stuck in her own thoughts. I want to be clear, she said. When I say I can't tell a lie, I'm not exaggerating. What do you mean? What I say is true, even if it shouldn't be. So when I say there are chickens, but maybe there shouldn't be. I just blinked, munching on my hard-boiled egg. I mean, it becomes true. And also, it has always been true, she clarified, which is why you might experience this sudden sense of disconnect. I didn't even question it. At that point, I had seen and heard so many absurd things that this was just the cherry on top. To me, it sounded like a genie, able to grant wishes. Why weren't the blue-eyed things coming for her instead of me? Do you have to say it, or is it enough to think it? I asked. Unclear, she sighed, so I try to do neither, which is why I keep to myself. Not much to spark thought when you're alone in the woods. Yeah, I've noticed. I looked out the window. There was still a breeze coming through the birch trees. I tried to just stay out of the way, she said. I don't want to trigger anything by accident. Not again. No slips of the tongue. No. She leaned back in her chair with a glass of lemonade. She had this strange look about her, like she was having trouble keeping her thoughts in check. She looked worried. I used to have terrible nightmares, I said. I used to think there was something wrong with me. My mom kind of wanted me to think that, so I had these awful nightmares all through high school. That sounds awful. It was, I sighed. So whenever I feel like something I am is bad, I make a conscious effort to be kind to myself. Otherwise, I'm just punishing myself for something I can't control. I see, she nodded. But what do you mean by nightmares? She blinked and tilted her head. There was that feeling again, like I was missing something. Like something had changed. You know, nightmares? I said. These images that come out of nowhere when you sleep. You mean a dream? I've had those, she said. I've had plenty. Like a dream, but horrible. Dark. She nodded, putting away her empty glass. I'd like to try one sometime, she said. I don't scare easily anymore. I spent the day trying to learn how to fish, trying to find a better toothbrush, and trying to fix a hole in my socks. My anonymous companion, on the other hand, spent most of the day inside the kitchen. She was trying out various preserves and just relishing in flavours, like she hadn't eaten in days. I made her a fish curry that night. A bit on the extravagant side, but I wanted to make a good impression. I tried not to think too much about what she'd said. Maybe it was true, maybe it wasn't. All I knew was that there'd been chickens at St. Gall since the first day I got there, and I hadn't paid them much attention. It made sense, though. They had everything they needed without me. That night, as I lay down to sleep, my stomach kept turning. There was some part of me trying to keep me awake. Then, a scream. A violent, unbridled screech. A woman emptying her lungs, tearing through her throat. I grabbed my flashlight and rushed outside. The woman in the blue caftan was sleeping in the cabin across from me. It must have been her. I flung open her cabin door. She just stood there in the middle of her bedroom. Her eyes had rolled back in her skull, and her mouth was wide open at an impossible angle. She just kept screaming like there was no end to the air in her lungs. A cold sweat forming on her brow. She was having a nightmare. I blinked, and I was in a different place. An old house, somewhere in the Canadian countryside. There'd never been a St. Gall. I'd come there looking for a friend, but all I'd found was horror. A house full of teeth, hiding like insects behind every nook and cranny. An awful wet smell, like the inside of a wooden mouth. A man with a face full of broken teeth looked up at me, on his knees, begging me to kill him. I raised a hammer and a metal bucket. I had to beat him into bloody pieces. Nothing could remain. Then, another place. Another truth. I was looking at a man sitting in a gas station bathroom, rust leaking out of his eyes and mouth as his phone died in his hands. Battery acid leaked onto the floor as his joints creaked like dying hinges. He couldn't stop coughing. He looked up at me with dying eyes. For a moment, all I knew was that I'd been there all along. "Warn them," he wheezed. "It won't stop." Another place. A green star, illuminating a winter landscape. The angry dead coming to see who intruded on their homestead. A man shielding himself with a cast iron necklace. Then, a swamp. An ancient, gluttonous beast, looking for their next meal. Ungodly eyes looking at me with the intensity of a sun. In the distance, the death roar of a once mighty lion. Little animals, twisted beyond recognition. Bunnies, frogs, even the chickadees in the birch trees. Horror after horror after horror. Parades of unspeakable cruelty. I was being pulled like a thread through the eye of a needle, all the while hearing this inhuman screech in the back of my mind. This was true. This was happening. It had happened, would happen, and was currently happening, even if it shouldn't. For a brief moment I found myself back in the log cabin. I had teeth falling out of my pockets, and my shoes were wet from the swamp. Rust covered my fingertips. The woman with the blue caftan touched my shoulders, her screams turning into a soft cry. "You're here," she said. "You're not there with them. Their place is not yours, and their horrors are their own." She hugged me. But it wasn't human arms. It was something else. Something I couldn't perceive. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry," she cried. I wanted to feel again. What did you... I had a nightmare." She stepped away, holding her head. She groaned, trying her best to stay in the moment. "I can't stop seeing them. I try to make them go away, but it might just..." She stepped away as her eyes turned white. Blood started dripping from her ears, little drops plopping on the wooden floor. "No, no, no, no," she groaned. "I can stop seeing them. I can. Wait, no." Suddenly I was floating in a river, gasping for air. I kept bumping against things in the dark. Faces, limbs, torsos. Dead bodies, floating, dragging me along. The air tasted sour, and the water stung my nose as a lukewarm gulp slipped into my lungs. Then an old house. A swarm of flies in the shape of a man. Forgotten souls given wings and hidden away. He welcomes me, as something sharp claws at my back. I turn around, only to see somewhere new. A monstrous man steps out of a lake. A man with a melon-shaped head and a sinister grin. "More," he chuckles. "More." I'm at a cliff, overlooking the New England coastline. I've lived there all my life. I am old, and my bones are weary. The woman in the blue caftan is there, her dark hair waving in the breeze. "Am I seeing things that have been?" she cried. "Have they always been? Are these creations my own, or... Please, Dad, Please." For a moment, I think she's talking to me. She reminds me of the daughter I always and never had. I take a step forward to comfort her, but she's not talking to me. A white feather brushes against my shoulder, and I felt that cold shiver running up my spine again. A blood-red eye in the sky, the size of God itself, parts the clouds. A rain of blood started forming in the skies above, staining more than the earth. She grabs me. "I'm sorry," she cries. "We'll never meet again. Please remember me as a human woman in a blue caftan." She wiped her nose as a bloody raindrop touched her cheek. "Yes, that's how I want you to remember me," she continued. Then she pushed me off the cliff. I didn't have time to scream as my breath was pushed out of my aging lungs. "You'll go far away," she screamed. "Back to your truth." Her face grew distant in the dark as I fell. Then pain. My body tumbled across a hard surface, as if shot from a cannon. I rested my face against warm concrete. It was a summer's night, in late June. My body was nimble, and my skin was soft. My hair had lost its greys. My own thoughts and experiences started to drown out the superimposed worlds I'd seen. All these visions remained, but as a distant, vivid memory. A living nightmare. I got up and brushed myself off. My ankle was sprained, and I was in the middle of nowhere. Somewhere further south, perhaps. I could already feel myself the simple comforts of St. Gall as I started walking down the long, winding road. I must have limped for hours when I finally heard the sound of an approaching vehicle. I stepped to the side, holding out a thumb. I'd promised myself not to be a hitchhiker, but I needed to at least know where the hell I was. Not once did I ask myself, what kind of person was driving down this lonesome road in the middle of the night? The car stopped next to me. I could see a man and a young boy sitting up front, and every light on the dashboard was broken. Every now and then you get that snap picture of just how small the world really is. It's one of those times when you're halfway across the world and recognize a guy from the gym, or you spot your childhood crush ahead of you in the line at the DMV. I've moved a lot and lived a lot, and these things happen to me every now and then. So when it does happen, I don't always think much of it. Until not too long ago, I lived in a small townhouse. I worked as a shift manager at a component factory in northern Pennsylvania, not too far from Pittsburgh. It wasn't anything fancy, mostly compartments and storage for snowmobiles and tractors. Honest work, but it took quite the drive to get there, almost 50 minutes by car, one way. But I had a great place. It wasn't big space-wise, but there was a great open floor plan that made the place feel 3 times bigger than it actually was. 2 floors, 2 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms, and a living room with an adjoining kitchenette. Perfect for a bachelor or a small family. The only problem was the bedroom door, which could jam if I closed it too hard. I was coming back from a bad breakup. My ex and I had been talking about moving in together, but we just couldn't make it work. She had these anxieties that kept her from really committing, and she ended up second-guessing herself to the point where I was no longer a part of the conversation. After a while, We simply had to accept that she had no idea what she wanted, but she wasn't in a place to be with me either way. I accepted a transfer up north, along with the promotion, and wished her the best. I'd been living up there for about a year when, one morning, I noticed someone moving in across the street. It was nice not to be the newest guy on the block anymore. I only saw glimpses of the owner. There was a woman standing outside on the lawn, pointing at two movers and trying to direct them, with a voice that could barely be heard outside her own head. It was like watching someone trying to tow a car with a rubber band. By the time I got back home that night, there was still furniture on her lawn. I decided to be the good neighbour and head over, see if she needed any help. She was doing her best to tip and angle a 3-seat couch by the time I got there. She wasn't making it through the door on her own. I waved at her. "Excuse me," I said. "You need any help?" "It's fine," she said. "Thank you, really." "You sure?" "Looks like you need to angle it and pull sideways. That's a rough one-man job." She rolled her eyes and let out a sigh. She nodded in quiet resignation, and less than a minute later, the couch was on its way through the living room. It's always a bit eerie to move into a new place. Everything looks so barren that you can hardly imagine it being a space where people lived and breathed and laughed. For the time being, this woman's life was all boxes and bare floors. Every step echoed off the walls. I helped her with a couple of boxes before she let her guard down. She had this short brown hair that sort of clung to her sweaty face, and these deep pockets under her eyes. I could tell she hadn't been sleeping a lot. There was a shake in her hands that showed she'd either been skipping meals or was deathly nervous. After carrying in some of her kitchenware, she stopped me at the door and forced a smile. "Sorry," she said. "I'm Julie." I introduced myself, shaking her hand. She was definitely trembling. "The movers screwed you, huh?" "Yeah, they were only paid to dump it all on my lawn, it seems." "Sorry to hear that. Looks like you're almost done, though." "Yeah, but the unpacking's gonna take a couple days, but it's nice to get settled." There was something about her voice that seemed familiar. An accent. It reminded me of my own. Then it just kinda clicked. I knew this woman. Julie and I had gone to the same school. I hadn't recognized her. She used to be the tallest girl in class. Then she'd just sort of stopped growing, while the others kept going, making her the shortest girl in class over the course of about 2 years. Now that I thought about it, it had to be her. It was obvious. I'd had enough of a crush on her not to forget that face anytime soon. The moment I recognized her, it was like she recognized me in turn. She let out a huff and looked me up and down. "I can't believe it," she laughed. "What are the odds?" "Julie, you wanted to be a teacher, right?" "Yup," she nodded. "And I am." "And you had these apple earrings," I said, gesturing. They were the size of golf balls. She couldn't hold back a snort and stepped away, crossing her arms. "You went out with James," I added. "Man, haven't seen him in years." Her smile froze in place. She nodded, rubbing her shoulder in a self-hug. I noticed she had a wedding ring. "Yeah," she said. "Good times." She excused herself and thanked me for the help. She offered me a 20 for the trouble, but I waved it off. She insisted, but I'd made my mind up. She ushered me out the door. "I gotta check on Danny," she said. She'd been awfully quiet. "You got a kid in there?" "Yeah, my girl Danny." She smiled. 4 years old. She's in her room. She's had a rough day. "Well, tell her I said welcome to the neighborhood, and feel free to drop by sometime." "I'll do that." I wandered off, only to stop halfway across the lawn. I looked back, only to see her still leaning against the doorway. "You still got those apple earrings?" I asked, No, she said, shaking her head. Times change. It was a stupid question, but I couldn't help myself. I waved goodbye, and that was that. I caught myself glancing out the living room window a couple of times before I headed to bed that night. I could see Julie in her window, putting up decorations. A couple of framed pictures, curtains, a couple of lamps and candles, and finally, a pot housing a tall, blue sunflower. Unusual. I'd had a huge crush on Julie in high school. I'd thought about asking her to prom, but James got there first. I ended up going with Margie H., who was more interested in using me as a dress-up doll rather than a boyfriend. There was a lot of do this, it's cute, and don't do that, it looks weird. She ended up spending most of the night with her friends across the room. James and Julie, on the other hand, only had eyes for each other, slow dancing under the disco ball to all the greatest hits of the 90s. But there seemed to be no James around anymore. Perhaps it was just like she'd said, times change. But looking back at that night, I couldn't imagine the two of them apart. Not for a moment. I tried not to bother Julie and her daughter for a couple of days. I thought about heading over to say hi someday, but I figured they needed some time to get settled. I was probably overthinking it, but I didn't want to give a bad impression right off the bat. It's one thing to be helpful. It's another thing entirely to be creepy about it. And you don't want to mess things up with someone you're going to see across the street for years, maybe decades to come. I wondered about her daughter, Danny. I was yet to actually see her. I had to leave for work so early that I'd never duly take her to daycare. And by the time I got off work, they'd already come back home. Julie wasn't letting her play in the front yard. Then again, maybe that was by design. You don't want your 4-year-old to run amok near a busy road. So I tried to keep my curious eyes to myself and focus on my own life. But after months of empty inboxes and being ghosted on apps, you start to cling to whatever light in the dark you can spot. And I couldn't help but to think that maybe a light had moved in just across the street. One day, as I came home and browsed my mail, I noticed a letter addressed to Julie. She had a different last name. It took me a while to connect the dots. She had James' last name. Given how she had a wedding ring, I couldn't help but consider that maybe they were still together. Either way, I had a misplaced letter to deliver. I made my way across the road and knocked. Julie opened, holding a phone to her ear, talking to someone. I handed her the letter in silence, and she rolled her eyes apologetically at me. She wasn't in a very enthusing conversation on her phone, apparently. She mouthed, "Thank you," back at me. As I turned to leave, she put her phone down for a second. "Hey, would you mind helping me with something?" I turned to her, raising an eyebrow. "I need some help with Danny's room. I'm useless with electronics." "I'll give it a go, sure." "Thank you so much. Drop by tomorrow around 7 if you can, alright?" "Tomorrow, 7. Got it." She put her phone back to her ear and waved goodbye. I just stood there for a couple of seconds trying to catch a glimpse of her through the window. But the only thing I could see was that blue sunflower of hers. The thing was tall, and it always seemed to be turned your way, no matter where you looked. It was downright creepy. The next day I went over to see Julie. My heart was thumping away in my chest a little harder than usual. I was trying to keep it cool and not get my hopes up, but there's something about an old crush that just taps at your heartstrings. I knocked on the door, peeking at the window. The sunflower was still there, and I could have sworn it was still turned towards me, even as I stood by the front door. Julie opened the door with a tired smile.